The story begins its narration. The action of the picture revolves around the description of the thoughts of the main character. According to them, the man was an ordinary food deliverer at home. He lived with his dog, who managed to become his most loyal friend. Readers saw a guy with overgrown dark hair and light eyes. He had a pointed nose and chin, which gave a young and well-groomed appearance. On his head was a helmet with big ears like a rabbit. Next to him was a dog with a dark blue gaze in blue and white colors. However, the character did not realize that there is nothing permanent, that everything can change dramatically and irreversibly at any inconvenient moment. In the next episode, the main character, who was sitting on the road, and his pet watched the surrounding situation with fright. The audience could see how they were surrounded by the motionless bodies of people. Someone was standing next to the vending machine with his back against it. The other lay down on the fence of a flower bed with a tall tree. And the third one was just in the middle of the road. As it turned out, it was a world where zombies were rampaging. The painting described how humanity had changed externally. Both men and women lost the irises of their eyes, making the look empty and somewhat frenzied. Their skin has acquired a purple hue, emphasizing the protruding vessels. Nails have become sharper and teeth are stronger. They moved in a crowd, thus knocking each other down and preventing them from reaching the prey, adding time to catch it. The main character was pleased with something. The fact was that, despite what difficult and dangerous times there were, he still had a chance to meet interesting and beautiful girls. The image of a tall and well-built heroine with short hair and brown eyes appeared before the readers. Her figure shone against the sunlight. The second reason was the fact that, of course, what kind of apocalypse could do without the system? The painting describes how a blue glow and tables with various inscriptions appeared around the man. For example, according to one of them, the device congratulated him on activating the food delivery supersystem at home. In the left hand of the main character, a phone was formed, and in the left a frying pan. However, in his opinion, it was like a setup, because this system was connected with the delivery of food to the house. Although he had awakened a hidden ability in himself, but contrary to expectations, the guy was still an inept food deliverer. He was interested in the question of why fate was so unfair to him. The character grabbed his hair and angrily began sorting through his thoughts. Even his dog has adopted a sad mood. And then there was an alert from the system that informed about the delivery from the end of the world, making an offer to sign for receipt. The development of the story revolves around the description of urban life. Above the tall buildings that looked like glass, the sky towered with different colors, from yellow to dark blue. Solar sparks flew in the atmosphere, which gave a magical appearance. On the head of the main character was a massive yellow helmet with large rabbit ears. He pulled on a slight smile and cast his relaxed gaze in front of him. The dog, who was sitting opposite him, happily wagged his pink tongue. He, like the owner, was in a joyful mood. And so the guy began his narration, thanks to which readers were able to get to know him. It became known that his name was Yifan, and he worked as a simple and uncomplicated food deliverer. The picture describes how the main character drove up to some building on his small yellow moped, as well as his uniform. He knocked on the glass door and greeted someone, shouting that he had brought rice balls to take away. A tall stranger came out to meet him, who stretched out his right hand to pick up a bag of food. Yifan pulled on a smile, making a cute expression on his face, and handed over the rice balls, asking the customer to leave a good review, at the same time thanking him. The order was completed successfully, as it was shown on the smartphone screen. The main character was pleased with himself. He exclaimed joyfully that everything went as he had planned. According to him, the man was engaged in delivery every day. He worked in every corner of the city, walked day and night to maintain world peace. In the next episode, Yifan was subjected to someone's scream, and not only him, his dog also got hurt. Someone cursed viciously to show how angry and upset he was. As it turned out, it was a girl with dark hair and sharp bangs. The lady furiously tried to convey to the man that for such a bad service, whether the main character wants to believe or not, she left him a bad review. Moreover, the heroine was sure that she was doing everything right. However, Yifan did not listen to her unintelligible speech any further. He made a few bows and continued to beg for forgiveness for a while. His mood was taken over by the animal. The dog, feeling like his master, tucked his long gray tail between his legs and pressed his ears, probably because he was scared of annoying and somewhat scary screams. Yifan and his pet, sitting in front and catching streams of cold air with a small mouth, rode on their yellow moped along a narrow street, which was illuminated by the glow from working eateries. That's just the character could never have imagined that one day, as a food deliverer, he would take on the task of saving the world. Suddenly, the attention of the main character was attracted by something that looked like a pillar of light, around which a fiery energy was formed, burning with its brightness. His eyes widened, either from surprise or fear. People around began to observe and discuss among themselves the fact that in the weather forecast it was said that wind was promised for today. Only such a phenomenon was not like him from the word at all. Each of them wondered what it was. Some even made the audacious assumption that the end of the world was approaching. So they were overtaken by fear. Yifan stopped his moped, leaning on his left leg, and then he exclaimed, cursing why the sky had moved beyond the solar system. He was just as confused as his dog. The main character plaintively opened his mouth, not knowing how to react correctly, and tears even appeared in his pet's eyes. Then his attention fell on the top of the smartphone, which made him tense up and doubt, because he received an order from the end of the world. Moreover, it seemed to him that someone was mocking him. The protagonist's eyebrows arched in a wide arc, and his lips closed like a duck's. Even the dog's eyes began to watch the phone suspiciously. They stared at him in silence for a while, and after a couple of seconds, Yifan pressed the green button. The countdown has begun. 10%, 0.30%, 0.50%. The host received the order, and the delivery supersystem was activated. When the download was almost over, something made the guy wary. Then suddenly a charge like an electric one hit the sky. Its glow illuminated everything around the main character at a distance of several meters. As it became known after a short period of time that the superfood delivery system was activated, orders automatically began to be accepted. And the first one was successfully received, so the reward for success was presented in the form of hundreds of points, and the order itself could be cancelled, but in this case the owner would suffer severe consequences. The picture described how, due to a strong jolt after lightning, which for some reason had a purple hue, Yifan fell to the left side of his moped, dropping his smartphone along the way. However, the app continued to keep alerting. This time it made an offer to insert an advertisement. A superfood delivery system is a good system for the good of people. Moreover, it was designed to provide a variety of high-quality services to humanity, which is in trouble all over the world. After that, something else followed. However, the main character was no longer listening. Or rather, he was not capable. Yifan was lying on the bare ground, trying to cool down from surviving the blow. And next to him was his phone with a bright screen. Then the action is transferred to the description of the urban infrastructure. On a high-rise building, readers could notice how the windows were lit pointwise. Signs were burning somewhere, and the sun has already set over the horizon, giving its last ray of light to illuminate the dark streets filled with various figures. Suddenly, a stranger appeared before the eyes of the audience, who leaned on his arm and tried to stand up. But the aura around him was somewhat strange. It had a dark purple hue. As it turned out, these figures were human bodies. Silhouettes began to appear on the horizon, around which bright energy burned. Readers could see the appearance of one of them up close. The stranger had sharp teeth, a swarthy skin tone, and the whites turned orange in his eyes, which was even more emphasized because of the creases that appeared under the lower eyelid. In the next episode, the story focuses on the destroyed buildings. Apparently, they were hit by the same charges as the main character, but they couldn't resist. Holes were punched on their tops. Everything was burning with a bright flame and was sealed with huge clouds of smoke. The picture describes to readers how the zombies rose in turn and began to move in one direction. At this moment, the main character was still lying on the ground. The Walking Dead passed by him, and he didn't even notice it. Of course, up to a certain point. Yifan moved his hand. As it turned out, the reason for waking him up from a long sleep was that the dear pet was drooling on his face, sniffing at the same time, as if he was trying to make sure that his owner was safe and sound, without any injuries. The man opened his eyes and instantly sat up, straightening his back. He stroked the dog on the head, from which he began to wave his sharp erect ears. As it turned out, the action continued after 16 hours. The main character began to look around and expectantly observe the current situation. Aloud he asked a question. He was interested in what was happening on the street and why there were many corpses there. They were everywhere, next to the soda machine, on the road and on the fence of the flower bed. Then something caught his attention. The pet humbly looked in the same direction as Yifan. It was about the smartphone. A yellow image with some kind of inscription appeared on his screen. A couple of seconds later it became known that a certain client had ordered pills for a heart attack. The recipient's address was in the Purple Dragon Garden 888. He became a character named Hin. The client also left his phone number in order to avoid strange situations. Moreover, the main character could get 100 points for delivery, but in case of failure, he will have to suffer heavy punishment. The next moment, Yifan asked a rhetorical question to the system, curious about what happened to the rice balls. He made an audacious and at the same time bold assumption that something had happened to the owner. However, he thought it was all some kind of joke because she wrote some nonsense. Suddenly, the picture focuses readers' attention on someone's steps. Apparently, women's, because the character's feet were wearing dark blue high-heeled shoes. Then this girl fell on the back of the main character, which made him somewhat happy. He half turned his head over his left shoulder and looked at his sister, asking her what she needed. However, the audience could not see her expression or understand if she really needed something. The reason was that the upper half of her face was hidden by the shadow of her long bangs. When the episode showed her closer, readers could notice the dark aura that lived around her. The heroine opened her mouth without making a sound, leaving Yifan unanswered after such mysterious behavior. The action of the next chapter begins with a description, or rather, with a study of the intimidating appearance of a new acquaintance. The girl turned out to be a zombie. She had sharp teeth and white skin on which there were drops of blood. The next moment, she readied her claws and got into an attacking pose. However, the main character managed to react. He jumped up on both legs, forcing his dog to make the same movement, and shouted at the top of his voice, at the same time cursing that he was only a couple of minutes late. The heroine began to move. The audience could see how the veins on her legs swelled. She got off the floor and made a jump. Her appearance was intimidating. The eyes alone were worth something. Their iris seemed to have disappeared, and instead of a white there was an orange area. The walking dead in her face behaved like a hungry beast that saw its prey and began to hunt it. When she rushed at a fast run towards Yifan, the man and his pet were very scared. It was as if a discharge ran through them, similar to an electric one. Only this did not revive them at all, but rather put them into a stupor. There were already tears in their eyes when suddenly a pistol shot rang out. He managed to stop the zombies, and now the man and his dog became even more surprised. The animal closed its eyes in fear, pressing harder into its owner, who all this time continued to watch his little sister fall to the ground. Then the story tells about the appearance of a mysterious girl with short brown hair and a refined figure. She was wearing a dark green top and a black skirt, around which was a brown bag. Yifan turned his head over his right shoulder towards her, and she, without thinking twice, explained that there were a lot of zombies behind. It was purple-blue, which influenced the main character even more. Surprise mixed with horror froze on his face, because a rather beautiful girl was standing in front of him. He briefly pointed at the recumbent zombie and explained that his strange reaction was provoked by the fact that she had just dealt with a zombie, and now he was faced with the question of who she was. That's just the purple-blue continued to stand silently and watch her interlocutor, who was almost crazy. Suddenly, something caught their attention. A light fog appeared on the street, and then someone's footsteps followed. Of course, they were zombies. There were several dozen of them. The Walking Dead as a whole group moved in the direction of the characters, knocking each other down and not allowing them to push through to the prey that appeared. They occupied the whole road, only now it might seem that there were several hundred of them. They were moving along the blood-stained street. Yifan, when he saw such a sight, opened his mouth in surprise and horror. The next second, he screamed at the top of his voice, making the audacious assumption that it was like a zombie movie. Moreover, he was trying to guess how many Walking Dead were in front of him. He even fell to the cold concrete ground in horror. And to make sure that he was not dreaming and that he had not gone mad, Yifan pulled his dog on the cheek, which only angered him. The animal bit the hand of its owner, and he, in turn, exclaimed resentfully how stupid he was. His hand burned red, as if it had been dipped in boiling water. Purple-blue entered the dialogue. She rushed in the opposite direction from the main character, at the same time saying that it was a waste of money. After a couple of steps, the heroine got on a red motorcycle and stepped on the gas. Just a second later, she disappeared from the horizon, leaving Yifan and his dog alone among the tall stone jungle. They stared after her in silence for a while, probably coming up with a plan for further actions. Although it didn't last long, because they decided to keep the Walking Dead company. But they decided not to give up. The main character ran after his new friend, shouting that she did not leave him alone, because how could she? The situation was quite dangerous. The man and the beast chased after her red motorcycle, raising clouds of smoke and dust behind them, still hoping for a good end. The story continues to tell an exciting development of events. This time she describes how a crowd of the Walking Dead ran after the main character and his pet, overcoming obstacles in the form of heights, boulders that collapsed after buildings broke down, and other zombies. However, suddenly there was some kind of shock, which caused a large flow of dust and smoke, which made Yifan close his eyes, protecting them with his hands. A new monster has appeared on the horizon. except he wasn't like the others. It was far from human. He had sharp teeth like a shark, a long tongue and red skin. From a human being, the creature took only the torso. As it turned out, a zombie of the second class appeared before the eyes of readers. His appearance greatly surprised the man who was already scared. In his head, he cursed heartily and wondered where these walking dead came from in the first place. There was a look of horror on his face. Moreover, it might seem that he was as if in prostration. It was as if nothing around him existed. There was a new blow. The shock was so strong that concrete broke through under its pressure, scattering small fragments after itself. The story describes to readers how a red-skinned zombie of the second class appeared in the sky, or to be more precise, right above Yifan's head. He made a swinging motion, as if a predator was trying to catch its food. But the main character managed to react. The man grabbed his dog and leaned back with all his weight. Thus, he was able to dodge the monster's blow, which struck with such power that the earth trembled and burst into small pieces. The guy, all this time holding tightly to the dog, rushed away from the zombies of the second class. However, as if he was in no hurry, he watched Yifan run away in the opposite direction. As it became clear, according to the words of the main character, he could not fight, so all he had to do was run away. Readers could notice how a red aura formed behind his back, and the guy himself has almost approached the building with high glass doors. Having broken the window, the man found himself inside some dark room that was not illuminated, even thanks to the hole made. Leaving his yellow helmet, Yifan held his pet in his arms and hid behind a wall. Thus, he could calmly observe the danger in the form of a walking red-skinned dead man who was prowling the street and looking for him. In his thoughts, the protagonist came to the conclusion that this second-class zombie had recently evolved, and for this simple and obvious reason, he should not have caught the eye of a hungry creature. Then the guy scratched his chin, slightly furrowing his eyebrows, and said out loud that, looking at the whole situation, the primary walking dead were moving slowly, they could not be active for very long. But, as for the evolved second-class zombie, its strength and speed increased significantly, but only feelings could be counted on. Suddenly, a dog barked menacingly. As it turned out, the animal warned its owner about the danger. A zombie appeared behind the main character, who rushed in their direction. Apparently, this creature used to be a cook, which could be seen from his uniform. Yifan caught sight of a frying pan. He grabbed it with his left hand and, taking a step forward, jumped high up. The man swore either out of anger or from fatigue. There was no fear in his eyes, only zeal and a desire to live. He looked down at the walking dead, and then, approaching him, struck a crushing blow, forcing his opponent to fall to the floor face down. Thus, Yifan managed to repel the attack from the zombies that did not come. He got up on both feet, leveled himself and kept his balance. Readers may have noticed that something like smoke appeared around him. Moreover, the main character himself greedily gulps air to restore his lost breath. The man turned his head over his left shoulder and said out loud that there were so many monsters waiting for him outside, and staying in this place meant waiting for death, because surely they heard the scream. The guy looked at the broken window through which a group of zombies and one evolve could be seen. However, something else caught the attention of the audience. The phone vibrated in the pocket of the main character. As it turned out, Master Yifan had completed the first kill, so he was entitled to a reward. The item took out 1 point. There was also permission to successfully activate the career attribute. Moreover, the system introduced readers to the current characteristics of the main character. His combat power was 6 units, wisdom 9, defense force only 1, luck 16. But as for the profession, he held the position of a deliverer, but the level of the profession was not developed. However, this only made the situation worse because Yifan got angry. He cursed out loud and shouted that he was already tired of this food delivery system because she didn't even try to owe him wages. The story then focuses on the purple blue, who came to the conclusion out loud that he was still there. The girl took a deep breath and looked at some device where Yifan's image was located. The story continues to lead its narrative, attracting more and more viewers, making them wonder what will happen to the main character, with whom the system was communicating at that time. She congratulated the host on activating the takeaway food super system. The novice package was now available to him. A blue digital space formed around him, and the guy himself was holding his phone in his left hand and a frying pan in his right. However, from Yifan's face, the audience could make a bold assumption that he had no idea what was going on right now. He had surprised eyes. According to the takeaway system, the main character received 500 points from the beginner's package, which could be exchanged for various goods. A burning blue scoreboard appeared in front of him, behind which there were devices of excellent shapes and sizes in the form of a bat, a brick, a glass bottle, and others. In the next second, the man came to some conclusion. Aloud, he was amazed at the fact that he managed to awaken special powers in himself. It was as if he had been electrocuted. Moreover, it might seem that he did not know at all how to react correctly. However, due to his growing curiosity, he cast a glance at the mysterious objects. The first brick came across, next to which was the inscription +3. Yifan twisted a funny expression on his face. Apparently, he was nervous because drops of sweat were already flowing down his cheeks. He pointed with the index finger of his right hand at the sign and asked what it was. His dog was also somewhat nervous because suspicion and discontent froze on his muzzle. Then the system explained to its owner that it had successfully received a gift package, so it made a reminder to him so that he would not forget to put 5 stars. However, it didn't stop there, because she felt that Yifan was required in getting answers to her questions. After all, he had no idea what he was dealing with. A moment later, it became known to both him and the readers that the food delivery system is a system that provides high-quality takeaway food services. Moreover, she even had her own slogan: fast delivery, quality delivery, big sales, superfood delivery system. The man's initial reaction was somewhat strange. He stood for a while and just tried to digest the information with a questioning expression on his face. But suddenly Yifan grabbed his overgrown dark hair with both hands and knelt down. He shouted at the top of his voice that he had received superpowers and still had to work as a deliveryman. Then an idea came to his mind, according to which the main character was born to work hard and hard. His dog, just like his master, drooped, tail down and ears tucked in. A dark aura formed around them, and something like a charge appeared in the sky. Yifan and his pet were alone for a long time. Apparently, they forgot about its transience, that they did not have time to keep track of how a group of walking dead appeared outside the window. They began to make their way inside the building through the broken windows. Their white eyes burned with a frenzied desire to get to the prey. The dog noticed them first. He began to bark maliciously, thus returning his master to reality. The man half turned over his left shoulder and saw this sight. There was horror in his eyes because he was caught off guard. In his mind, Yifan cursed and was horrified because the creatures were approaching him. Then the picture focused the reader's attention on his right hand, in which there was a frying pan. The guy grabbed her harder and took a defensive pose. As it turned out, it was an item offered by the system. And she, in turn, congratulated her master on receiving a frying pan worth 15 points of strength. A zombie with sharp claws was moving towards the main character, but the man was already ready to meet his opponent. He and his dog waited expectantly. Behind them were fragments of wooden chairs, tables, left probably after the attack of the zombie chef. In the next second, the narrative described how the food delivery system again brought a congratulatory message to the main character. It became known that he had successfully activated the attribute of a side hidden profession, chef. Then the current host data was presented. For example, Yifan's combat power was 15 units, wisdom as many as 91, defense capability 1. His lucky number was 16. Moreover, it was even indicated that he worked as a deliveryman, but the secondary profession, chef, was not active. The number of his points was 501. The man was very upset that tears fell from his eyes. He made a strange and somewhat funny sound, turning to his dog. Now readers could know that his nickname was She. Yifan grabbed him and pulled his cheek, while at the same time pathetically saying that the guy worked as a delivery man. And now that he got the strength of a chef, she became his secondary profession. In his opinion, it was too hard for him. Moreover, the main character compared him and his pet with children from a poor mountainous area, because now they had to bear such a heavy burden at such a young age. Yifan now hugged his dog, who was apparently unhappy. You could tell by his tired eyes. She silently watched what his master's next move would be. That's just it. Might seem that such strange behavior left the walking dead with a few questions. It was as if they stopped, staring at the prey that was a couple of steps away. The zombies watched the main character for a while until his dog moved away from him, still with a grumpy and indignant expression, and in general the animal behaved like a human. Yifan's words didn't take long to wait. According to his remark, the man came to the conclusion that by destroying zombies, you can get points that could be exchanged for valuables. This thought inspired the guy. He leveled up and cooked a frying pan, standing in an attacking pose. The main character exclaimed that if someone wants to be rich and successful, then he should rely only on himself. His expression reflected the desire to win. The character frowned, thus straining his eyes to see his opponent better, and the long bangs hid her eyes from the sunlight. The next moment Yifan was in the air. He decided to react quickly, not giving the Walking Dead a chance to attack. His rapid movement attracted the attention of the zombies who had been dumbfounded some time ago. They made an evil grin and made strange frightening sounds, trying to reach the main character with their sharp claws. But because of his slowness, one of them missed the moment when Yifan dealt him a crushing blow to the face. The shock was so strong that the Walking Dead flew several meters back. The new episode describes how Shi joined the battle with zombies, who tried to stop and delay the newly appearing Walking Dead with his sharp fangs. The main character continued to fight back, coping with rivals who had no end. And all the man used as a weapon was a frying pan, which he was somewhat surprised, and even glad, because after a couple of blows, Yifan exclaimed that he had chosen a pretty good device. However, a Walking Dead man of the second level, an opponent with whom the main character had already met before, made his way through the window frame. His abrupt appearance attracted the guy's attention, making him alert to the danger in the face of an evolved zombie. There was even a small spark in his eyes, giving off a red tint. That's just Yifan managed to turn away from the attack of the red-skinned Walking Dead, who hit the tiled floor with terrible force. The power was so crushing that small fragments from the stone foundation appeared in the air, and the main character, who managed to jump up, raised after high clouds of smoke and dust. The story develops further. This time she focuses readers' attention on the frying pan, which the main character used as a weapon. In the middle of it, there was a red spot in the form of a blow mark, from which steam emanated. Apparently, the bottom of the dishes warmed up from the attacking movement from the walking zombie when he tried to scratch the man. And he, in turn, looked at his frying pan with a surprised face and mentally even admired what strength his opponent possessed. In an instant, Yifan was on the ground. After a short flight, he landed on his feet, bunching up so as not to damage his limbs. A red-skinned monster was moving towards him, which, it might seem, had no eyes, but had sharp fangs, spikes on its back, and a long tongue. The Walking Dead didn't move like the others. He directed all his weight on his hands and pushed off with his feet, moving in this way like a wild animal. Chaos was going on around the monster. Debris from broken stone slabs, furniture was shattered, and the walls of the building seemed to have never existed. In his head, the main character was thinking. He came to the conclusion that the strength and speed of these second-level zombies exceeded human ones, and that is why it is impossible to cope with them relying only on their own strength. The man got to his feet, straightening his back and putting his hands forward, preparing for a new attack. Then the story describes that something sharp, similar to a stake, attracted his attention. It might seem that fate had given him a hint, because the tip of this object shone, as if winking at Yifan. And so a brilliant idea was born in his head. It was like an electric shock hit him. The narrative still kept the focus on the sharp object, past which the main character took a couple of steps. Apparently, he was moving towards a red-skinned opponent, and he, in turn, stood motionless, mouth agape, thereby revealing a view of a huge and powerful jaw, made terrible sounds similar to the roar of a predator. His appearance was terrible. A long tongue protruded from his mouth. Each tooth was sharpened like a blade. There was no cartilage of the nose. Instead of the palate there were only 2 holes, and there were no eyes at all. Then Yifan made a very dangerous maneuver. He turned his back to the Walking Dead of the second level and put his hands in different directions. However, the guy was still holding the frying pan, in case his plan didn't go well. And at this time, the sharp end of the protruding object sparkled. Suspicious activity on the part of the main character only excited the evolved zombie. Even readers could notice how saliva flowed down his muzzle. Apparently, he already imagined how he managed to grab his prey. The Walking Dead rushed towards Yifan, demolishing the foundation behind him. The aura around him thickened, bringing a terrible and frightening shade to the silhouette of the Red Man. And when he had almost overtaken a man with his clawed limbs, standing with his back to him, the main character stared at him, turning his head slightly over his left shoulder, and then abruptly jumped to the right side, leaving no chance for his rival to catch him. And the zombie of the second level accelerated so fast that when an obstacle appeared in front of him, he simply could not stop. Thus, the monster did not have time to react and fell on the table leg. And in order to finish off and finally stop the Walking Dead of the second level, the guy made a swinging movement and dealt a crushing blow to the evolved creature. The following episode describes how the food delivery system congratulated its owner on a successfully completed mission. He managed to prevent an attack from the zombies of the second level, for which he received as many as 50 points, and now their total number was 551. The main character could spend them on any product of equivalent value. Yifan looked at his so-called weapon and exclaimed joyfully that, fortunately, the monster was not very smart, because otherwise he would have lost long ago or, even worse, ended his life. And then something bumped into his back. An electric current seemed to run through the man's body, which alerted him to danger. As it turned out, it was Purple Blue, a girl with short hair and a toned body. Yifan asked her a question. He was interested in what his interlocutor was doing, to which she ordered him not to move, because from now on he is her bodyguard. And finally, the heroine asked him to follow her. The next chapter will tell readers about how the main character spoke without a shadow of fear, addressing his new friend and asking her a question. He asked if she really thought he would just give up. The heroine stood quietly with her left hand on her side and listened to what her interlocutor would say. With a sharp brush movement, Yifan pointed at his dog, forcing him to react. Calling she, the man gave the command. And suddenly the animal was baring its teeth, making warning sounds at the same time. This made the girl wary. She quickly glanced at the angry dog. A man entered into the dialogue, who replied in a joyful tone to she that he finally understood, so his master was really happy. He had an ear-to-ear smile on his face. And then the picture describes how one sausage appeared on the horizon. There was even a glow around her. The fact was that the Purple Blue decided to attract the dog by manipulating it with food. Of course, the dog couldn't resist. She released his tongue and obediently began to wag his tail. This caused Yifan's face to change. His blissful facial expression became dismissive and irritated. The man clenched his left hand into a fist, and the slight smile turned into an evil grin. Suddenly, the next episode describes how the main character ended up tied to a chair. Actually, the same thing happened with Shia. The man could not say a word because of the obstacle in the form of duct tape on his mouth, so he ate the sounds and got some kind of moo. His dog resigned himself to the fact that he didn't make a move, so he just kept his head and bushy tail silent. Purple Blue started the conversation first. The girl was holding a whip in her right hand, probably in order to terrify Yifan. She asked him a question out loud. She was interested in the fact whether he would say what she wanted or not. The aura around her turned a dark shade with purple and black colors, which gave her a somewhat evil look. The silhouette of the heroine towered over the immobilized man and his dog. After these words, although, apparently, because they saw a long whip, these two became nervous. The whites of their eyes blocked the iris, which made them seem empty, traces appeared, and both mouths trembled. As it turned out, she was curious about how Yifan managed to awaken his incredible abilities, so she tried to force him to tell about it in a demanding tone. Then she pulled on the whip, thus drawing his attention to her. The characters were inside some old and shabby room, the walls of which were covered with mold. Why, they almost crumbled. A thought flashed through the man's mind. He felt that his interlocutor had behaved somewhat stupidly. The reason was that he couldn't speak because Purple Blue had taped his mouth shut. Actually, that's why she couldn't hear anything from him. It might seem that the heroine heard his thoughts. She instantly found herself in front of the guy and removed the obstacle from his face, which interfered with their conversation. Apparently, the heroine did it very abruptly, because Yifan twisted his facial expressions, as if he was in pain. She said out loud that she had taken off the tape. The next moment, Purple Blue lifted the protagonist's chin using the hard end of the whip. She lowered her body a little to get a better look at the guy's face, and thereby follow his reaction. The heroine asked him a question, and readers became aware that she was interested in the man's abilities, so she asked what he possessed. Moreover, she made an assumption that there was some kind of organization behind Yifan. Her eyes shone with excitement and desire, as if she was deliberately trying to please him. Apparently, the girl manipulated her interlocutor, forcing him to be attracted to the appearance. As it turned out, her attempts were not in vain. He really liked what he saw, readers could tell by his expression, which turned red. There were even small drops of sweat from the tense situation. Even she couldn't keep from looking so mesmerizing. An aura of love and tenderness hovered around them. It was as if they were hypnotized. Only in the next second, Purple Blue straightened up and looked down at her captives. She changed her face, making the expression of facial expressions more rigid. The atmosphere became oppressive, because the girl again asked if the main character would tell her his secret. Then she made a swinging motion and tried to treat him badly. Her next move made Shi nervous, who was surprised that this was happening to his master, because he could get it too. Purple Zin screamed at the top of her voice, because if Yifan doesn't tell her anything, then otherwise he will have to suffer a heavy punishment. The audience saw the longing in her eyes. She was telling the truth and was sure of what she was doing. Such pressure, of course, affected the character's morale. His pupils shrank, and sweat and saliva began to form even stronger on his face, flowing from his mouth open in fear. The overgrown bangs hid the man's eyes with a shadow, and the tense eyebrows emphasized small wrinkles. He forcefully exclaimed that he would do everything as the girl said. The story continues its fascinating narrative. This time the picture tells how, under the pressure of the purple blue, the main character gave up and began to conduct his monologue. According to him, he really didn't know how he managed to get such powers a little earlier, because the guy didn't do anything for this, he just woke up with them. Yifan took a deep breath, as if this fact made him a little sad. To his left sat his dog, who, by his very appearance alone, pressed on pity. Shi rolled his eyes for effect. Apparently, the animal hoped that the heroine would take pity on them and believe what they were saying. Then the main character made a sad expression on his face, as if her oppressive behavior made him burst into tears. Tears streamed down Yifan's face like a stream, and he himself exclaimed, turning to his sister to let him go, referring to the fact that he was still a child. That's just the heroine was unshakable. Her facial expressions did not change from the word at all. Without thinking twice, she asked the bound guy what his relationship was with the Pangu Corporation. At this point, the system decided to familiarize readers and the man with this new term. It became known that the Pangu Corporation was one of the largest corporations in the post-apocalyptic world. She had the ability to artificially create people with different abilities. A black silhouette of huge buildings appeared before the eyes of the audience, which were surrounded by a red sinister aura. Yifan was genuinely surprised. He asked in purple blue what kind of corporation it was, because he had never heard of it before. The girl believed in the honesty of her interlocutor's words. However, the next moment she asked him to show what he was capable of. The heroine was holding a gun in her right hand, so she wanted to add a more scary and frightening look to her figure, thereby putting pressure on the will of the guy. She exclaimed that if Yifan disobeyed her or even allowed an escape attempt, then she would have to act. Her gaze expressed determination. Even though the gray room was dark due to the lack of sunlight, her sinister eyes were clearly highlighted. Apparently, the mysterious appearance of the purple blue made the main character say that he would do everything as she wished. And it's going to happen right now. According to the man's remark, his ability was that he received points for destroying zombies, which the guy could later safely exchange for various items. He was scared because his body was still tied up. Moreover, the girl had a weapon. His words pleased the purple blue. In her thoughts, she came to the conclusion that exchanging points for items could be quite useful. But she didn't say it out loud, saying it together in a demanding tone so that Yifan would show it to her. The picture focused on the main character. Sunlight broke into the room, which illuminated the top of the guy's head. He gave a positive answer and looked at his interlocutor. Suddenly, blue tables appeared around them, which brightly illuminated the gray room. Behind each of them were various items, from food to devices that could be used to fight. The system asked a question to its owner. She wondered if he wanted to buy something in this mini store. Yifan pulled a smile from ear to ear and with a joyful tone added from himself that this food delivery system seemed to him quite convenient now. Then his gaze fell on a blue iron jar that was floating in the air. As it turned out, the main character was negatively disposed, because soda cost as much as 15 points. For him such a price seemed quite large and not appropriate. His face changed. Now the facial expressions expressed a bad mood. The man pretended that he was crying. And the reason was that why a young man who earned only 3,000 a month had to take on such a burden. But his thoughts were interrupted. Purple Blue knocked on the chair the guy was tied to and gave him the order to hurry up. She pointed the index finger of her left hand at this very can of soda and demanded that the main character take it. Suddenly, the digital object began to disappear, and after a short moment it appeared right in front of the man's face. This trick surprised both him and she. A blue color emanated from the soda can, which illuminated their funny reaction. They both opened their mouths in anticipation of what would happen next. The girl directed her hand to the object floating in the air, trying to take it. And in her thoughts, she came to the firm conclusion that in such a difficult time, these things can be considered precious. Moreover, she was convinced that this guy's abilities were very useful. Only something interrupted her thoughts. As it turned out, it was the phone that gave the sound of the incoming alert. It was in the pants pocket of the main character. Purple Blue took the smartphone, the screen of which is bumpy yellow. Readers became aware that the system made a hint to Yifan. The customer was a heroine named Lan Suhin, and the order itself was placed on the provided number. The time for delivery was allocated for 1 hour and 15 minutes. With the last sentence, the system asked the man to deliver everything as soon as possible. When Purple Zin saw the name Zai Hin, she was very surprised. It was as if a discharge, similar to an electric one, passed through her body. The story continues to lead an exciting narrative. First, she describes how Purple Blue and the main character moved around on their motorcycles, red and yellow, respectively. The girl asked the man when he received the order for Zai-hin. Tall glass-like buildings accompanied their movement. Yifan replied after thinking for a while that it was before he fell into a coma. The reader's attention fell on the pretty dog, who joyfully opened his mouth, spilling out a long pink tongue, and caught the air currents in this way. That's just Purple Blue only got more angry from this. She screamed at the top of her voice, wondering why the man did not send this order earlier. Further, the fierce and angry girl made it clear to him that if something went wrong through his fault, she would not let him go unharmed. There was horror in her eyes. That's just who she was worried about. Such an audacious reaction made Yifan shrink from resentment and fear. He begged his interlocutor to spare him. Even she stopped messing around and wrinkled his little nose in indignation. And then the main character decided to defuse the situation. A brilliant idea came to his head, which he voiced a couple of seconds later. As it turned out, the man made the assumption that his new acquaintance and this Lan Zai-hin were sisters. He scratched his chin and made a mysterious look, which, in fact, was repeated by his dog. The couple were like twins. Their mood changed in one direction. They behaved similarly. That's just Purple Blue didn't like it. She flashed her eyes, in which a bright spark appeared, emphasizing her resentment in her gaze. A moment later, it became known that something attracted her attention, because the heroine grabbed her gun, which greatly strained the protagonist and she, who shrank from fear, and rounded their eyes. The girl fired a shot. She hit a walking dead man who appeared behind the man. While he was joking and trying to bring a new acquaintance to a dialogue, a zombie managed to sneak up on him, pricking up its gray long claws. Thanks to Purple Blue's quick reaction, a failed attack from the monster was prevented because due to the push and pressure from the dust, he tipped backwards over his back. Then the story showed it in close-up. The walking dead literally flopped down, and Yifan and she, retreating morally from fear, watched the danger in the face of the monster, sitting on their yellow moped. Suddenly the girl exclaimed and demanded that the guy stop talking complete nonsense, and finally helped her. She was angry while the two revived again. The heroine decided to spur the man and his dog, saying that if they arrived later than her, she would break Yifan's leg. An aura thickened around her, acquiring an intimidating chill. The next episode describes how the Purple Blue pressed the gas and rapidly headed forward, raising columns of dust and hot air after itself. The main character stood still for a while and silently watched her back. The road was clear. The sun was shining on the street, illuminating the huge multi-story buildings that were built like a ruler. A sharp movement on the part of his sister made Yifan nervous. He shouted after her that the girl was riding a motorcycle, and he was on a scooter, so he just physically would not be able to catch up with her. She was the only one who didn't worry about anything. He was glad that the trip had begun. The blue color scheme prevailed in the city because of the towering skyscrapers that almost reached the sky. They were of different sizes and widths. However, the next episode described to readers a multi-story house, around which a bloody aura swirled. There were drops of blood everywhere, on the windows, on the walls, on the road in the end. As well as zombies, they roamed around this building, as if they were guarding what was inside. The attention of the audience was attracted by bright sparks and black smoke, which rose from the braking of a red motorcycle. Purple Blue. The girl stopped her phone and exclaimed, turning to Zai-hin so that she would hold on, because she would be near soon. Behind her, a yellow moped appeared, on which the main character Ishii was riding. That's just their appearance was very tired. A man with a sweaty face, twisting his breathless and dissatisfied facial expressions, triumphantly said that they had finally arrived. And his dog, at that time, was foaming at the mouth. When Yifan got up from behind his scooter and took a couple of steps in the direction of his new friend, the girl had already prepared 2 pistols and turned to the main character, saying that if he had arrived a second later, she would have made him regret it. The guy came closer and stood back to back, looking at the Purple Blue over his left shoulder. In his opinion, he was very lucky that he could run well, because otherwise he would not have had time. The man then prepared his frying pan, which he used as a defensive weapon. Light energy was formed around them. Apparently, the characters were counting on each other. The narrative continues its rapid development, forcing readers to empathize with the main characters. This time the story begins with a description of the Purple Blue. She was holding a pistol in both hands and looking somewhere to the side. Behind her were tall buildings that were decorated with flower beds with planted trees with bright green foliage. As it turned out, her attention was attracted by a walking zombie. Then, not only the heroine, but also she and Yifan were already looking in his direction. After a couple of seconds, the audience could see his appearance. It was a level 2 zombie. He had a human torso and head, but he was distinguished from other monsters by a spider-like jaw with sharp claws and huge clawed paws that exceeded the usual size by 2 times. The main character disparagingly said out loud that he had a terrible mouth, and then he glanced at the girl who was standing to his left. Purple Blue was lost in her thoughts at this time. According to them, the heroine was wondering if everything was okay with Sai-hin, because there were so many monsters on her face. Now the narrative has focused on Shi, who made an evil expression of his muzzle and bared his teeth. Suddenly, the second-level zombie broke into a run, raising a column of dust and crushing the ground. This forced the main characters to prepare for the attack. The Walking Dead man opened his mouth and carefully watched the prey. However, a girl ran out to meet him, which somewhat surprised Yifan. He watched as the girl jumped over the monster. Thus, now the creature with large tentacles was rushing to the dog and his master. Purple Blue landed on both feet, bunching up to avoid injury, and turned her head over her left shoulder, casting a quick glance at her buddy. She screamed at the top of her voice for the guy to deal with this creature himself, because she planned to save Sai-hin. However, such audacious behavior on the part of the girl did not please the main character at all. He screamed in horror so that she would not leave him alone in any case. This is how she reacted. It was as if they were revived by a charge similar to an electric one. Only the Purple Blue was already far away from them. Then the guy's gaze fell on the approaching Walking Dead with large claws, as if he was turning into a spider. The zombie was running towards the man with his arms outstretched. It might have seemed that Yifan changed his mind. Because the horror left his face, a joyful appearance appeared instead. The main character pulled a smile from ear to ear, and the position of his eyes and eyebrows expressed confidence and the desire to win. The guy exclaimed out loud that he just wanted to try out his frying pan in battle again. In the next second, he took a step, coming down off the floor, and the story focused on the zombie's head, or rather on its lower part. Once in the air, Yifan delivered a crushing blow to the Walking Dead, forcing him to bend backwards. He fell to the ground, raising dust and stones after him. Then she decided to finally immobilize him. The day dog bared his sharp fangs and opened his mouth wide, heading towards the zombies. The main character stood silently and watched how his kind pet could show himself. On the other hand, suddenly, the system started an alert. An inscription appeared on the blue table that the man received 1 point. Now his total number of points at the moment was 481. However, this unpleasantly surprised Yifan, because he made an audacious assumption that the system was broken. The reason was that he had just defeated a level 2 zombie, and he was only given 1 point. The man pursed his lips and looked at the monster again. Only at first he came across Shi, whose mouth was completely covered in blood. His eyes were burning with a bright blue color. Anger and some kind of rage could be read in them. After a couple of seconds, he was already sitting and wagging his tail. Even his muzzle was clean. That was probably why a warm yellow aura shone around him. Of course, such a rare behavior did not leave the dog without attention. Yifan squatted down, stroking Shi's neck, and made a guess that the dog had changed a little. Suddenly, something made the main character turn around. He looked back and took a deep breath. Now the facial expressions of both the man and Shi have become tense again. Moreover, the energy has acquired a dark shade mixed with black and purple colors, and readers could only guess what had happened. After all, the dog was transformed by making a grin, and his master was nervously coming up with a plan of action. The story continues to lead the narrative, preserving the intrigue. The action describes how 3 figures appeared on the horizon. They were zombie girls dressed in swimsuits. They were about the same height and the same build. Instead of whites, there was some kind of orange emptiness in the eyes, and the claws were on the fingers of both hands and feet. Behind them, the sun had already begun to set, giving the last rays of its radiance to illuminate the glass surface on which the Walking Dead were walking. However, their appearance somewhat puzzled the man and his dog. The reason was that Yifan was doing bad things, so he put his left hand on his hip and held the frying pan down with his right hand. To his left sat Shi, who, like his master, twisted his displeased face. That's just this fact didn't bother the zombies at all. One of the girls started running, moving towards the main character, which made him wary. The monster with long blonde hair and skin, the color of which had a purple hue, made a swinging movement, trying to hit the main character hard. However, he, in turn, managed to react and substitute his frying pan, so the girl hit her bottom. The impact was so powerful that under pressure, the so-called weapon hit Yifan in the face. For a while he stood silently and held his head, trying to come to a normal state. The Walking Dead, once again preparing his clawed hand, watched the prey expectantly. Then the guy closed his left eye and pointed at the monster. Snot flowed from his nose and tears from his eyes. The right side of his face was smeared and scratched after being hit and coming into contact with a frying pan. He exclaimed and objected that it was too much, even superfluous. The story focused readers' attention on the expression of the monster girl's facial expressions. She didn't understand what Yifan was talking about, because her response was an evil grin and a wrinkled face, which made her look like a witch. The main character asked her forgiveness in advance and demanded that she did not blame him for what he was going to do. There was interest in his gaze. Apparently, the man was eager to test his strength and show what he was capable of. After a moment, Yifan took off from the ground and hovered in the air in a jump, leaving the walking dead in the face of a girl of the first level to watch him alone. Then he made a swinging motion with his frying pan. Red flames shone around him, as if he had caught fire with the idea of victory. Aloud, he shouted at the top of his voice what it was called: a man from above, a woman from below, a ferocious dragon in the sky. At the moment of landing, the main character made a fierce expression on his face, trying to beat out anger and rage. In the next instant, Yifan delivered a crushing blow to the zombie girl in the green swimsuit. The whites of his eyes turned a ferocious red, and the aura around him thickened, becoming dark, which is why the man's appearance acquired a frenzied energy. Other walking dead, apparently former girlfriends of the stricken heroine, silently watched as the guy struck her down. They spread their clawed hands in different directions and stared in front of them in bewilderment. And after some time they rushed away, leaving the body of their friend. Yifan towered over her and cast a glance at the others, who had already managed to move a few meters away from him. The main character became joyful, of course, because he coped with all the obstacles that arose. Exclaiming that the situation was in his favor, he put his so-called weapon on his right shoulder and relaxed. However, his peaceful mood did not last long. Something was happening behind his back. A sound caught his attention and made him half turn over his left shoulder. The problem was the appearance of Purple Blue, who fired a shot with her pistol. Under her right arm she was leading a heroine with long blonde hair. Readers may have noticed several walking dead running after them. When the man looked at the girls, he heard a new acquaintance call out to him. She was asking for help. Moreover, his expression, which was almost always confident and bold, took on the appearance of fear. Probably, the reason was in the immobilized Sai-hin, whose eyes were empty. It's like she's been zombified. The next chapter describes the actions that took place around Purple Zin and Lan Zai-hin, a new heroine who had long blonde hair. She was dressed in a school uniform and apparently somehow felt strange. The girl was unable to move on her own, so she leaned on the shoulder of the heroine already familiar to readers. They were being chased by the walking dead, and at least there were only a few of them. Yifan took a look at them and in his thoughts wondered if this was the same Lan Hin. He compared it to the Purple Blue, and as he expected, his guesses turned out to be true. Suddenly, some walking dead got too close to them, which alerted a girl with short hair and a refined figure, which was also emphasized by a top and a short skirt. She turned her head over her left shoulder and stared at the monster. In the next episode, viewers could see him even closer. The creature's nose, or rather what was left of it, looked like a pig's snout, the whites of its eyes became orange chasms, and its teeth were pointed like a knife blade. Purple Blue fired a shot and dealt a crushing defeat to this zombie, forcing him to lean back over his back. Then she called out to Yifan and in a demanding tone gave him an order to go to their side as soon as possible and help. Apparently, it was difficult for the girls to carry Lan Hin herself, but she was still able to repel the attack of vicious and hungry creatures. After another scream, the man finally came to his senses. He and she rushed towards the direction of the two heroines who were in trouble. The main character made a swinging motion with his frying pan in a gesture so that the next walking dead man received a portion of blows. A bright aura shone around him, giving him the appearance of a hero or savior. The man managed to distract the monsters on himself, thereby giving the female representatives a chance to escape. Yifan and his dog coped well with the danger, which, in fact, made the cold Purple Blue smile and blush in her face. She caught a glimpse of her savior, who continued to strike with his frying pan. For example, he stopped the attack of a zombie, who, apparently, used to be an office employee, because he was dressed in a strict suit. In the next episode, the focus was on Shi, a dog who stopped the walking dead thanks to his sharp fangs. He bit some monster on the leg, preventing him from getting closer to the girls who were trying to escape. Then the story shifts attention to Yifan, who managed to repel the attack of another creature of the first level. Some time after the end of the fight, the man fell into thought. In his head, he regretted that he no longer received delivery points for destroying zombies of such power. The main character stood and watched the road on which the bodies of his former rivals were scattered, looking out for new ones. At this time, Purple Zin sat laying him down and tried to bring her to her senses. Ifan made the assumption that from now on, level 1 zombies were no longer considered the walking dead. He put his bloody frying pan on his right shoulder and after some time went to the girls. Suddenly, the guy took out some kind of jar with a red lid and handed it to his friend, saying that it was probably an order for her. When Purple Blue took it, he asked her a question. He wondered if everything was alright with the heroine with long hair. Moreover, he believed that they were very lucky, because he managed to deliver the goods on time. Suddenly, the system started notifying him. She congratulated the main character on the successful completion of the mission. The reward was 100 delivery points, and as it became known, the guy opened a hidden mission. His eyes lit up with interest and, to some extent, excitement. Readers remained interested in what she meant by herself. The action of the next chapter begins with a description of the mysterious space inside which the main character and his dog found themselves. It had a color scheme consisting of white, green and blue. Ifan examined the digital location and repeated the words about the hidden mission aloud to the system. He was interested in what was actually happening. The glow was so bright that the man tried to hide his eyes by covering them with his right hand. Thus, he was able to reproduce the shadow and better inspect everything around. In his opinion, this time the system appeared differently. Suddenly, a blue silhouette appeared in front of him. As it turned out, it was the spirit of the system. The sparkling character greeted the main character and introduced himself. After a certain period of time, readers could see a girl with long pink hair, under which clothes with the same coloring were chosen. In the stranger's right hand was a staff. She looked like a fairy, just as small and magical. Then the girl raised her hand and pointed to the side, at the same time telling the mortals to get on their feet. Ifan and Chi froze, not out of amazement, but rather out of misunderstanding. Discontent was reflected on their faces, and the main character, apparently, said aloud the thoughts of both. They didn't fully believe what was happening to them now. Moreover, the heroes didn't even know how to react. Therefore, the man said out loud the words of his stranger and made a stupid facial expression. In the new episode, the story draws readers' attention to the somewhat arrogant behavior of the spirit of the system. The girl crossed her arms over her chest and raised her eyebrows proudly, as if Ifan had no right to an explanation. Aloud she replied that he and his dog should kneel down and pray. The stranger called them mortals, emphasizing this. And if the man forgot, then she would like to remind him that he could call her a goddess or an angel, in which case any option would be appropriate. However, this information did not please the guy with Shii at all. They bared their teeth viciously and stared menacingly at the spirit of the system, thus warning it. Their eyes, red with anger and rage, reflected anger, and the aura around them took the form of huge flames. When the girl turned in their direction over her right shoulder, she asked them a question. She wondered what the mortals thought about what she had been talking to herself about all this time. Readers may have noticed how the dark energy began to thicken behind her. Probably for this reason, beads of sweat appeared on her face. That's just the reason was different. Ifan struggled with the system for so long, and she, in turn, just came and gave the order to bow before her. Although the main character's next sentence sounded somewhat boorish, but nevertheless he said it out loud. The man wondered if the stranger really thought that he would not beat the girl. His dog picked up this mood. He growled and viciously watched the spirit of the system. And she screamed at the top of her voice that they would not come close to her, and quickly waved her left hand, as if fighting back. Suddenly, both of the protagonists' hands reached forward. The story describes to readers how the girl made a confused expression on her face. Her eyebrows rose helplessly up, large tears appeared in her eyes, and her skin turned red. She gulped air greedily in order to regain her breath. In the next episode, it became known what was in Ifan. The man tickled the left foot of the arrogant spirit of the system. When she had already started laughing uncontrollably, the main character asked to tell him why the system did not want to leave his life in any way. He was so interested in the question of where she came from in the first place. Otherwise, the guy promised to do everything possible to destroy it. The stranger burst out laughing, and the man felt that he needed to explain himself. In his opinion, he had somewhat confused the spirit of the system, so he should have noted that it was indeed very beautiful. A suspicious grin formed on his face, and his aura turned dark, as if Ifan was up to something. Finally, a girl with a face as red as a tomato entered the dialogue. She made it clear to the man that she did not mind spending time alone with him, because the most severe punishment for this inappropriate gesture was 3 years in prison. The main character, who was still holding her ankle with both hands, turned his head towards she, who apparently agreed with him. The dog, just like his owner, waved his muzzle in a sign of no. Suddenly the guy asked her a question. He was curious about what she was actually talking about, because he was a completely respectable citizen. The man imagined himself smiling and holding a red sign with an inscription that contained an organization of young people helping those in need. Moreover, he narrowed his eyes suspiciously and, pointing at the spirit of the system with the index finger of his left hand, added that he had no attraction to children. Apparently, he mistook the girl for such because she was small in stature and weight. In the next remark, the guy was curious whether his new interlocutor was a good person, because for what reason she was connected with the system. Such bold words made her angry. The heroine clenched her fist and defiantly pulled it forward, thus threatening him. The spirit of the system took an attacking pose and shouted that if this brave mortal dares to continue saying such things about her, then he will obviously not be well. She put out her staff and added that otherwise she would have to help the second user instead. The answer of the main character did not take long to think. He narrowed his eyes and strained his eyebrows, which made his expression look somewhat suspicious. Ifan asked if he had heard the second remark. Moreover, he was interested in the fact who the second user actually was. However, as it might seem to readers, the girl only became more cheerful from such a jealous reaction on the part of the protagonist. She replied that when a user is connected to the system, the second one receives help from her. The story focused on Shi, who did not understand how to react correctly. He just wagged his tail for a while and looked somewhere to the side. It became known that the name of the second user is Dennis. The spirit of the system turned to the dog and in a demanding tone gave him the order to kneel and bow, at the same time thanking the Lord that he gave him a chance. However, the dog did not respond, at least for a while. Suddenly, Chi and his master made their facial expressions twisted, as if they had just been insulted. Although it was, Ifan called the system spirit aunt and made an explanation for her that it wasn't like kindergarten, so she didn't need to treat them like children. Finally, he asked her not to scold him for reminding him that the methods he used were extremely cruel. The girl in comparison with them was so small that it could seem as if she was talking to two predators. She froze and began to wait for something. The story continues its fascinating narrative. This time she describes the real world in which Purple Zin and Lan Zin were left alone. The first one wondered where her friend with the dog could have gone. She continued to hold the heroine, who found it difficult to resist on her own, and began to inspect the area around her. Tall buildings towered behind them, and green bushes were a little closer, thanks to which they could hide from the danger that had arisen. In front, on the road, were the bodies of defeated zombies. Then the girlfriend of the main character looked at some small device that showed his awakening glasses. According to him, there were already 78 of them, which surprised her a lot because they were insanely high. This made her make a bold assumption that Ifan was in a parallel universe right now. A light aura and white sparks appeared around her, but her thoughts were interrupted by the screams of a girl with long hair. Zai-hin began to behave strangely. At first she shrank, as if she had something in pain, and then the heroine abruptly opened her eyes, in which there was no iris and pupil, they looked like white abysses. Suddenly, a blue glow appeared around her, which raised a huge hurricane simultaneously with columns of smoke and dust. Such an unexpected jolt threw Purple Blue several meters away, but she managed to get to her feet. In the next episode, the story focuses readers' attention on the blue butterfly wings that formed behind Zai-hin's back. The girl rose up, as if floating. Such strange and suspicious activity surprised the heroine with short hair. She came to the conclusion in her thoughts that the values of her friend's awakening had also increased, so now she was interested in the question of what was happening to her. Moreover, there was a shadow of horror and fear on her face. When Zai-hin came down to the ground, the girl approached her, after a while switching to running. She was excited because she had no idea how such a thing could be possible. For what reason did Hin become awakened? And she, in turn, again helplessly closed her eyes and fell unconscious. Purple Blue managed to catch her and slowly lowered her body to the ground. The sun was already sinking below the horizon. The heroine made the assumption that her friend's strange behavior was related to the company in which she worked. Then she looked at the small device and saw that the awakening glasses had become 96, which surprised her even more. Out loud, Purple Blue turned to the girl, saying that most likely she was right, because her awakening values are really close to the awakened person. She, in turn, tried to open her eyes, but she was still silent. Some kind of blue-colored seal appeared on the forehead of this mysterious Zai-hin, and her eyes had a dark blue hue. Suddenly, the action is transferred to the enraged spirit of the system, in whose eyes terror was reflected. The squirrels changed to red space. This character grabbed his staff and clenched his left hand into a fist, so she showed how angry she was. And then the picture showed the readers Yifan and Shi, who were floating in the air connected by thick digital threads. The girl took a deep breath and said out loud that if they did not receive a confession from the system, they would be severely punished. What both characters were very surprised, rather even scared. Their sweaty faces were as if dried up, only the white was reflected in their eyes, which gave them a somewhat frenzied look. The aura around them took on a dark hue, mixed with purple and blue colors. Then they defiantly fell to the floor. The system spirit had been silently watching all this time when Yifan and his dog would finish their game. It might seem that such strange behavior bored her. Suddenly, the main character got to his feet and scratched his chin. He said out loud with a humbling tone that since he had been chosen by the system, he would have to accept her offer anyway. She, who was sitting to his left, waved his muzzle in a gesture of agreement. Then he turned to Dennis, saying that a man would rise above everyone, that even the system would ask him to become its owner. However, the last phrase puzzled the girl. She twisted her face and mentally exclaimed that she had never said such a thing. A fiery energy formed around her, and there were sparks in his eyes. But the spirit of the system did not dare to object. She clenched her left hand into a fist and mentally reflected that now there was much less potential in Yifan than in a dog. At the next moment, the heroine took a deep breath and changed the subject. She began to conduct a dialogue regarding the secret mission. Suddenly, a blue scoreboard appeared in front of the main character. The following words were written on it. The system brought congratulations to Yifan on the successful activation of the secret mission. The user, that is, he had to get 5 stars, and then he would be rewarded with 500 delivery points. In case of failure, unfortunately, it will be destroyed. Information about the path of the stars made the main character tense up. The reason was simple and obvious. In such an apocalyptic world, they were very difficult to obtain. Moreover, if the customer evaluates his work unfairly, he will still be destroyed. His words made Shi howl in fear and terror. However, the girl waved her staff and asked him not to worry, because the system would make a fair verdict on its own. Then her face took on a suspicious look, because something amused the spirit. As it turned out, the point was that she would make this verdict. That's just the main character was not at all happy about this information. He looked at his interlocutor with glassy eyes and was silent for a while. Then the man scratched his chin and let her know that he wasn't worried at all about the 5-star rating, because he got it quite often, and it wasn't very difficult. He also added on his own that his nickname used to be the King of Delivery. However, suddenly a question popped up in his mind. The story continues to lead an intriguing narrative. In the next episode, she describes how the main character patted his dog on the head and addressed the spirit of the system that stood in front of him. He said out loud that he had said a little earlier that Dennis would receive some of the information from the system as a second user. Then he fell into thought. The man remembered that before he was surrounded by zombies, he managed to see a strange light in the sky, and after he was struck by lightning, he scratched his chin and continued to explain. If the guy wasn't wrong, then that's when the system noticed him. Images appeared in Yifan's head as he fell off his yellow scooter and lay motionless for a while. Then the main character was behind the 11th, that is, Shi, and began to pull his cheeks. He made a bold assumption that the dog was also recognized by the system. Moreover, for this simple and obvious reason, Shi was in subspace. He was interested in the question of what abilities his pet possessed. The girl watched in silence for a while with an uncomprehending look what her interlocutor was doing. Even the dog was surprised by such a stream of thoughts on the part of his master. As it turned out, Shi really had hidden abilities. The spirit of the system explained that his strength was in the wool, and the skill was dog polizushki. The girl crossed her arms over her chest and closed her eyes triumphantly. That's just Yifan and the 11th twisted their facial expressions, which was accompanied by drops of sweat quickly rolling off their faces. The man asked her what kind of ability it was. He wondered if this skill was even useful in any way, because, in his opinion, it consisted in the fact that she was supposed to lick someone. The spirit of the system began to explain. As it turned out, the main character was the owner of the second user, so if this cute dog melts people's hearts, then he will understand the value of his skill. An episode appeared in the heroine's head when the purple blue stroked the top of the dog's head and smiled, relaxing at the same time. Moreover, the dog polizushki could open up various combat abilities for Yifan. This information made him somewhat happy. He could spend the deliverman's points on goods and items, and dog polizushki on opening and leveling abilities. The girl was inspired. She went on to explain that the first time they unlock this ability, they will be given a combat skill. As it might seem, Shi was somewhat surprised by the information he heard. But there were sparks in his master's eyes. He called out to Denise through laughter and looked at the 11th, who was only getting more nervous. The aura even thickened around the dog, acquiring a dark shade. However, suddenly the dog began to disappear like a player in a game. Then the action is transferred to the real world. A blue glow appeared to the right of the purple Xin and Sai Hin. This attracted the attention of the girl, who continued to hold her unconscious friend. Yifan and Shi appeared in front of them. The man ran up to his new legal and asked the girl a question. He was interested in what happened to the heroine with long pink hair. Purple Shino picked up Zai Hin and made an offer to start by finding a safe place to rest. Her gaze expressed seriousness and more reliability. The bright sun illuminated the tall, bright buildings, from behind which a large shadow appeared, hiding the danger in the city. The picture described how a group of guys were moving in the direction of a huge mansion that was completely covered in blood. Red spots decorated its walls, windows, fence and yard. Then they were inside. The painting describes how the silhouette of the main character disappeared behind high wooden doors. However, something interesting was happening in the basement of this villa. The story tells readers that a man was lying on a cold stone floor. He had short brown hair and purple eyes. The character wore square-shaped glasses and somewhat shabby things. The stranger shouted at the top of his voice, looking in front of him, so that someone would not enter the room and dare not touch him. The whites of his eyes acquired the red color of the mass of burst capillaries at the edges. And then the action describes how someone's hand with swollen and bulging vessels stretched in the direction of the frightened man. As it turned out, after a short period of time, it was a monster, except he didn't look like the rest of the Walking Dead, because even his silhouette was different from a human one. This zombie had bright blue skin, which in some places was illuminated by red spots, similar to flashlights. This monstrous creature had 2 heads, 4 arms that looked more like wings, and at least 5 legs. And this is just what the readers managed to see. Energy continued to thicken around the monster, which had an evil and intimidating character. South Korea is a happy place because there are burgers in this country. The young man with brown hair was thinking about this, who was sitting at his desk at that moment and eating a burger. He was also glad to have cola and Nikes. The young man liked capitalism, but he understood that if a person is poor, he will become a victim of others. At that moment, he looked at the girl who was just such a victim. Another girl stood next to her, throwing her arm over her shoulder, and asked, laughing, how she became an outcast, because it was only dawn. She said that she gave her clothes to her, and then clarified with others that she was beautiful. These clothes were becoming to her. Then she told that tight-lipped girl, calling her by the name of Song Si-byuk, that the guys like her that way more. The girl also added that she knows about her obsession with guys. Song Si-byuk stuttered and replied that this was not the case at all. Another girl standing with those two said not to make her laugh, and that maybe she would also say that she was not going to seduce a guy who had recently been transferred. It was the young man who was eating the burger. At that moment, he was looking at them. A large-built guy from their company told others to look at, in his opinion, a defector pretending not to hear them. To him, he looked arrogant. When the guy approached the young man, he bent down to his face and asked if he thought so, calling him a communist dog at the same time. The young man still did not understand anything. But then the guy knocked the burger out of his hands. Then I asked him who allowed him to eat a burger in class, because it stinks terribly. He asked the young man why he was making everything so complicated by flying to South Korea, because he didn't even pay taxes. The girl who had hugged Song Si-byuk before laughed and asked the guy why he was digging up the young man, because he hadn't even done anything. Another guy, black-haired, said that he himself does not pay taxes. There was another guy sitting next to him, shaved to zero, and, laughing, said that the big guy had always been a patriot. The black-haired man told the big one to stop and offered to quickly check the identity. The young man leaned back on the back of the desk with his elbows and answered the big guy that he came to South Korea because he wanted to live. For him, North Korea was a bad country. There were no burgers, no cola, not even Nikes. The big one said that the young man is still a capitalist. Song Si-byuk looked at the new student. At that moment, a big guy with a smirk on his face asked the young man why he should not behave like their leader Kim Jong-un. The young man smiled and said that he would describe the whole existence of the guy in one poem. What? It was unexpected. Look at this freak. He knows he can't and decided to change the subject. And then the young man laughed. The young man continued, asking what he didn't know, because the League of Legends is a culture in itself. He again asked the question that he wanted to hear a couple of phrases from another champion. He started saying insults, calling someone horrible and dirty freaks. The big guy was angry because of the young man's words and asked him about the fact that he addressed them. The young man with a smile on his face disagreed and said that it was a quote from one of the league champions, and then repeated the insults. The big guy's company was not happy with his words. The guy called him a commie and raised his hand over his head to strike. The young man grabbed his coke and hit the guy in the face with it, causing the can of this coke to burst. At that moment, the young man was thinking about the fact that communists are a word that is used when referring to communists. The big guy flew to the desks and chairs, and blood was flowing from his face. The other guys looked at the two of them in amazement. A black-haired guy from the company of a large one ran to the young man, who at that moment thought that it looked like this was one of these stories. He dodged the black-haired man's blow and attacked him with his elbow in the face. At the same time, he thought that South Korea is a country where it is too dangerous to send adult spies. When the black-haired man fell, struck by a blow, a shaven-headed guy from the same company appeared behind him, while he raised a chair over his head for a blow. But he was also defeated in front of a young man who, with a kick from a U-turn, attacked him alive, and then brought down the other leg on top of him, nailing and hitting him thereby. The young man understood that this was why it was better to send young spies on a mission. All the guys looking at them were amazed and frightened by what had happened. The young man approached the big guy and asked him what he still wanted him to pass the personality test. The young man thought that this was the reason he came to South Korea as a spy. After a while, the lesson began. Everyone was sitting at their desks, who listened to the teacher, who went about their business. Song Si-byok sat next to the young man and looked at him. Then she turned to him, thereby attracting his attention, and shyly thanked him. The young man started looking at the blackboard and the teacher again, while saying that he wasn't doing it for her. Song Si-byok told the young man that he shouldn't have done that, because he doesn't know because he transferred. But those guys he fought with are terrible. Everyone will sit still because of them. But then the young man interrupted her, saying that if she twitched, how long was she going to live like this? He also told Song Si-byok that if she continues to behave like this, something very bad will happen to her one day. But let her do as she knows. Also, the young man praised how well she looked in that outfit. Meanwhile, some guy was sitting on the couch with his feet on the table, smoking a cigarette and talking to someone on the phone. The guy said that it was really a relief, addressing someone as Chairman Lee. He also clarified that the only victims are people who are below him. Chairman Lee's voice came from the phone, asking the guy about what he would do if the child of each of the chairmen was beaten. To this, the guy replied that it happened only because he was not at school today. Chairman Lee said that he should have come so that this would not happen. He gives the guy money so he can deal with people like the transferred student. In addition to the guy, there were other young men in the room. They were standing in a row against the wall. The guy replied that he would try to solve the situation so that fewer people would hear about it. He said to believe in him. Chairman Lee only told him to try and do so. That was the end of their conversation. The guy's name is Park Sung-do. He was 18 years old, and he was the leader of the gang of Yongjun High School. When the conversation ended, Park Sung-do said that it was difficult to serve their young master. He got up from the sofa, and then went up to one of the other guys and asked him if they had said anything to his father. Park Seong-do received an answer that the chairman did not know about the incident yet. After that, he said that he would handle the problem himself, so let them not disturb him. The other guys told him that they understood everything. At another table, 3 guys were sitting on the sofa and armchairs, one on the left side, the second on the right side, and in the middle on the sofa was a guy who was sitting with a girl in his arms. The one who was sitting on the left chair asked Park Seong-do about whether Chairman Lee was there. The one sitting in the right-hand chair said that the chairman was scared at the very thought that his precious children might get hurt. The one in the middle said there was nothing they could do about it. Even all sorts of little things are presented as big problems for the Association of Parents and Teachers. That's why they get paid, but still, they need to keep an eye on and pick up everything for them. Park Sung-do came over, sitting down, to the one who was sitting with the girl, and said that he was aware, but it annoyed him. That guy asked what the new student thinks of himself, because he just transferred and already arranges this. He asked about the fact that someone had sent him. Another guy clarified that it was for seizing control at their school. Park Sung-do was opening some kind of blue tin can with a drink at the moment of their dialogue. The second guy asked if anyone needed it, because there are many more schools besides them. But one of the guys said that their school is different, as it is owned by the Yongjun Group Company. He also said that Sun-do's father also got up because he took care of their school. Park Sung-do got angry and told that guy to watch his tongue, to which he received changes. Also, Song-do said that it was just a deserter who decided to show off out of ignorance. One of the guys clarified about the deserter, and then asked if the transferred student was a spy. Park Sung-do calmed the guys down and reminded them that they have to work tomorrow, so they need to prepare. If it seems to someone that some freak allows himself a lot, then they should work on his behavior, which is what Sun Du said. The transferred student was in the corridor of the school at that moment. He was drinking a drink from a box through a straw, but then someone called him. It was Song Si-byuk. She told the young man that she was going to throw out the garbage and asked if he would help her. She was holding a blue trash bag with both hands. When they were both walking down the street, Song Si-byuk stopped in front of the young man and, standing with her back to him, asked what he had said earlier about his desire to live. Without waiting for an answer from the young man, the girl said that South Korea might not be so different for him. Song Si-byuk turned to the young man and apologized to him, while tears flowed from her eyes. She also said that she also wants to live. At that moment, the young man saw a company behind her, which consisted of guys and one girl. Among them was Park Sung-du. Park Sung-du laughed and clarified that the transferred student had come to them, and then he threw the cigarette butt out of his hand. He called the young man a commie. The transferred student was calm. The girl from their company was the one who bullied Song Si-byuk earlier in class. This time, she came up to Song Si-byuk, laughing, and grabbed her by the hair while asking what she was talking about, and said that she was right about the authenticity of that one's arrival. She also said that Song Si-byuk masterfully seduces guys. The girl herself screamed from grabbing her hair. The young man looked at them all and said that it wasn't that he had come to them just for her, he was just waiting. He asked about the company, what they really thought about the fact that the young man came to them without suspecting anything. These words surprised the guys from this company. Park Sung-du got up from the chair he had been sitting on earlier and, laughing, said that the transferred student was terribly arrogant. Park Sung-du approached the young man, asked him about what motivates him, and then suggested that he wanted to take over the high school. The transferred student only replied that it was. Park Sung-du laughed at his words and asked if he had lost his mind, as well as what he would do after that. The young man asked him about the fact that isn't it obvious. After that, he said that he would capture everything they were interested in. With a smirk on his face, the transferred student said that it was cool for him to earn money and make friends among important people. At that moment, he was thinking that this was the best cover for a spy. Park Sung-du didn't know what to say to him, and then asked the young man how he found out about it, because it's very secret. The young man replied, saying about the ease of it. Park Sung, with a smirk on his face, asked the young man about what he also knew about the other. The transferred student turned his head and looked at what was happening behind him. Several guys came up behind him, and Park Sung-du meanwhile asked if he knew that they were going to teach him a lesson. Park Sung-du took out his black wallet and, taking out the bills from it, suggested that the young man not do so, because it's better for him if people like him are with him. Park Sung-du held the bills in front of his face and offered the young man to just work for him, because he would pay 200 a month. The gang leader also clarified with the transferred student that isn't it the same thing, and then, throwing his arm over Song Si-byuk's shoulder, offered to take it for himself as a bonus. Park Sung-du asked the young man if he liked the deal, because isn't it cool? The transferred student replied to him that it sounded good, even if he hadn't told him. The young man still liked Song Si-byuk's outfit. These words startled Park Sung-du and scared Song Si-byuk. The gang leader asked the young man about his tastes. The young man grabbed Song Si-byuk's hand with one hand and held her waist with the other, and asked about the fact that he could use it as he wanted. The girl screamed at his actions. Someone from Park Sung-du's gang said, laughing, that the young man was a real man. The transferred student himself was thinking at that moment that it was not necessary to fight and get what you want. He thought it was a good deal, that it was a good deal. He whispered to the surprised girl that he had already told her earlier that if she continued to behave like this, she would be in big trouble. Park Sung-du said that there are a lot of people in this place, so maybe they will make love in another place. After these words he laughed. The leader of the gang, holding out the money, told the young man to take it, because this is the payment, as they agreed, namely 200 with a bonus. The young man went in his direction, saying that he was very kind. He turned to Song Si-byuk and told her to listen to him carefully, since she is his now, so let her not cry next time. Park Sung-du didn't understand what he was talking about. The transferred student told the girl to fight and at the same moment hit Park Sung-du in the face with his fist. The young man himself thought that he was not sure that this would happen. It might have been better for a spy to be on the same side with those guys. But he doesn't care. The other guys were surprised at first, but then they got alarmed and flew at the young man with their fists. Memories appeared in the head of the transferred student, in which someone dragged away a crying child, reaching for someone with his hands and calling his brother. The young man kicked a bag of garbage at the guys, while thinking that, after all, everyone in this place is his enemies. Song Si-byuk looked with shock at the young man who continued to go into battle. Meanwhile, he was thinking that South Korea is not too different. He admitted that Song Si-byok was right. She was right from the start. The young man kicked the guy in the face, into which a bag of garbage flew off. And at the same moment, the girl who had previously bullied Song Si-byok fell under their feet. The young man continued to be attacked, and at that moment he was thinking that escape was never an option. Memories flashed through his mind of how, as a child, he was brutally trained to be a spy in various conditions. He knew that the only option in this food chain was to use or be used. The young man understood that if you don't want to be used, you have to be the one who eats the other. Both north and south, the transferred student put a garbage bag on the head of one of the guys, then cut him and punched him in the head. The young man was a member of the 505th Special Forces Unit, and his name is Im Ha-jin. Im Ha-jin called the next guy to attack, and at that moment he decided for himself to start taking over the school. Im Ha-jin punched some guy in the face, thereby overpowering him. Both were bare-chested and wearing khaki pants. Their fight took place between other guys standing in the ranks, who were also bare-chested and wearing the same pants. There was a man and a guy on the rock that towered over the guy's formation. One of them was of large build and about 50 years old. He was dressed in a military uniform and stood smoking a cigarette. Behind him was a young guy in a uniform and a cap. The big man asked the guy for the name of Im Ha-jin, and then praised his ability to fight. The guy replied to the man that this is not the only advantage of the young man. He is also very smart and well-trained. The guy also told the man that although Ha-jin was raised completely based on combat training, he is the one who can think about becoming a high-ranking official representative in South Korea in the future. The man said he was sorry because he could not believe that these young guys were entrusted with the future of the party. The guy standing behind him said that each person has their own task. Moreover, more adult spies are busy with the service. At a younger age, like Im Ha-jin, they have to infiltrate South Korean society in order to take a leading position. The man agreed with the guy, extinguishing the cigarette on the ground, and said that if he says so, then it's right. The man, continuing to squat, reminded the guy that Im Ha-jin is an orphan, and then asked him if he would become a traitor. The guy grinned and said that the man should not worry about it, because the young man is a very loyal person. The guy said that there is a single member of his family, or rather, he is talking about his younger sister, who has been with him since childhood. At the same time, he showed a photo of a girl not much younger than Im Ha-jin himself. Outwardly, she looked very much like a young man and had hair slightly longer than her shoulders. Currently, Im Ha-jin was calling the next guy to approach him. After that, 3 people rushed into the attack at once, but one of them was defeated because of a bottle thrown at his head, which shattered when hit. The other guy raised his fist to strike, but was knocked back by a kick to the stomach from Im Ha-jin. 2 more were approaching the young man from behind. One of them tried to hit him in the side, but Im Ha-jin managed to dodge, and then attacked him with an elbow in the head. From the front, another guy was approaching him at that moment, but the young man dodged his blow in a jump, leaning on the one he had previously attacked, and then swung his foot in the face of that one. At the same time, the recline knocked down another guy running towards them. But they didn't stop, so 2 more guys were running towards Im Ha-jin. One of them has already swung the bat to strike. When he hit, Im Ha-jin dodged. Then he tried to hit again, aiming at the young man's head. But he dodged again, crouching a little under the bat. After that, Im Ha-jin grabbed the bat from the guy, and then attacked him in the face, and he held the bat like a rapier. Park Sung-do, who had already regained consciousness, looked at the picture presented to him with blood on his face and shock. He didn't understand what was going on. Meanwhile, the young man continued to defeat his henchmen one by one. Park Sung-do realized that the young man fights well. The gang leader wondered if there was any logic in that, and also how he would be able to defeat him at all. At that moment, Im Ha-jin looked at him and then started walking towards him, which scared Park Sung-do even more. The guy shrank and raised his hands palms up. He asked the young man to stop and admitted that he had underestimated him. After that, he offered him 300. Im Ha-jun pretended to think, repeating the amount previously mentioned. Park Seong-do, in a panic, stuttering, asked that this was not enough for the young man, and then offered 400 and then 500. Ha-jin told them about 100 million and what he would think then. He said this with a smile on his face. Park Sung-do was in a panic. He felt a brick under his hand, and then rushed with it to attack the young man. Im Ha-jin kicked Tom in the face, while breaking the brick in half. The girl from their gang looked at the young man with horror, and then ran screaming from there while pushing Song Si-byok. The young man and the girl looked after her, but then Im Ha-jin surprised the girl with his question about her intentions to leave there. Song Si-byok bowed in front of him, apologizing at the same time. To this, Im Ha-jin told her that there was nothing to apologize for, and that even if it wasn't for her, someone else would have done it. The girl tried to say something else, but was stopped by a young man who told her that if she was really sorry, then let her give him 50,000 won. She was surprised by this. Meanwhile, a man was sitting in a sparsely populated cafe, holding a dossier on Im Ha-jin. There was written his name, age 18, his gender, place of birth, namely North Hamjeondo, Gyeongseol. It also described his way into the country, namely that he crossed the river as a deserter in the autonomous Korean Chinese district, after which he crossed Laos and Cambodia to get to South Korea. A special note was the information that the young man was a homeless child. From the age of 8 he was bottomless with his younger sister. The man was the leader of the 3rd Team for Local Operations of National Intelligence, and his name is Song Jae-wan. He recalled how he interrogated a young man in one room. They were sitting opposite each other. The man was sitting with his hands folded in a lock on his lips and with a serious look. Song Jae-wan asked Im Ha-jin that he was a spy. To this the young man answered him with a smile on his face in agreement. The man's thoughts were interrupted by a girl who began to sit down opposite him and asked him what she could also eat, because she was hungry. When the girl sat down at the table, she asked the waiter for 1 pasta with butter. After that, she asked her older friend about what he was doing and whether he knew about the ban on carrying documents with him. The girl was also a member of the National Intelligence Service and was a member of the 3rd Team for Local Operations. The girl's name is Ra Hongju. Ra Hongju asked her senior friend about whether these documents are prohibited materials. Song Jae-wan put the documents on the table and politely asked the waiter for a glass of red wine. Ra Hongju picked up the documents. With a smile on her face, she immediately recognized Im Ha-jin and said that he was a young man who confessed to being a spy and turned the whole national intelligence upside down. She clarified with the man that isn't this nonsense that the young man says to attract attention. A waiter approached them and served the man a steak. Song Jae-wan told the girl that the young man really is a spy. The girl did not understand what he was talking about. The man notified her that he had checked the accuracy of the information. Ra Hongju immediately jumped up from her chair, slamming her palms on the table, and asked what the man was doing then. Didn't he need to catch the young man sooner? Song Jae-wan told her not to start a panic, because Im Ha-jin wouldn't cause any big problems anyway. If they catch him at the moment, given the current mood and relations between the North and the South, it will be perceived in political circles as a public stunt. If you catch a young man, then do it only en masse. This is exactly what the man Ra Hongju explained. He also said that usually, instead of catching spies one by one, at this moment he put several sliced pieces of steak in his mouth at once, because he likes to eat everything at once. With his words, he amazed the girl. Im Ha-jin and Song Si-byok were sitting on chairs in front of the window in the store. The young man was eating instant noodles, while the girl was sitting with Onigiri. She asked the young man about his solitary escape from North Korea, to which she received a positive response. Song Si-byok thought that the young man lives alone, so asking him about this. But Im Ha-jin interrupted her thoughts, saying that he has a younger sister who works in a noodle shop in Pyongyang, North Korea. The girl was surprised by his words and asked again about the noodle. The young man got up from his chair and put his red backpack on his back, and then said that they had eaten well and he was leaving. Song Si-byok agreed. Im Ha-jin stopped and told the girl that she had to give him 48,110 won. Looking out of the shop window at the young man already walking down the street, she thought that he really wants the girl to pay him so much money because she works part-time for only 5 hours. It was already dark outside. Im Ha-jin was walking down the street, and memories of his separation from his sister at a young age surfaced in his head. How they reached out to each other, but they were carried away in different directions. Im Ha-jin called his sister by the name of Ha-young, and she called him, calling him just brother. Im Ha-jin was thinking that there was still a little bit left, so let his sister wait for him, because her brother would come and save her no matter what. An image of Song Si-byok flashed through his mind, and he thought that, oddly enough, she looked a little like her sister. But then the young man felt something. Then he dodged the blow. After that, another blow followed. The guy attacked him with a bat. Im Ha-jin knocked the bat out of that guy's hands with a kick. The young man prepared for the guy's next attack, but he was struck by who the guy who attacked him was. He was surprised that Im Ha-jin was able to dodge the attacks, because he was hoping to knock him down. Then the alley in which they were blinded by the headlights of the car, thereby blinding the young man. Park Sung-do, namely he attacked the young man, stood with his back to the car and, with a smile on his face, asked Im Ha-jin what he really thought about calming him down. Here, next to Park Sung-do and in front of him, 4 guys appeared, rather even men. Park Sung-do, with a smile on his face, asked Im Ha-jin for the name of Song Si-byok, the girl he took for himself. He informed the young man that the girl's mother was in the hospital, and she herself lived alone. The gang leader asked the young man if he understood that if something happened to the girl, it would be his fault. Park Sung-do also said that since Im Ha-jin is a fugitive without parents, then he needs to deal with him. Judging by his body, he would rather let his older comrades deal with him. Im Ha-jin told Park Sung-do that he had contacted the wrong person. After these words, the young man pinned one of the guys by the face to the ground with one hand, thereby knocking him over. Everyone was shocked. Then, Im Ha-jin called the gang leader by name. With an angry expression on his face, the young man said that he had climbed to the wrong person. Someone slapped Park Sung-do. It was a man in a sky blue suit. In addition to the two of them, there was another man in the room who was standing nearby and watching this altercation. The man in the blue suit told the guy that if he had done things, he should deal with them properly himself. Then he clarified with him that he wanted him to pick up his garbage after him. Park Sung-do turned to this man in a frightened manner, calling him father, and said that everything was wrong, because he did not know that the transferred student was so strong. Park Sung-do's father began to beat his son with his hand, who at that moment shrank, covered himself with his hands and asked for forgiveness. The man stopped and exhaled, and then stood half sideways to his son and another man, while adjusting the sleeve of his shirt and jacket. He asked the other man what was going on about the chairman, to which he received the answer that they wanted to do everything as quietly as possible, because they were all children working for Park Sung-do. Also, the man said that the chairman had sent him the address of a young man from North Korea. He would sort it out, and Park Sung's father would not have time to notice it before. Park Sung-do's father asked about North Korea. The guy, looking out from behind him, confirmed his words and said that the young man was a fugitive from North Korea. Perhaps he was a spy and also a very good fighter. Another man, adjusting his glasses, said that the young man does not even have connections in South Korea, so it will be easier to deal with him. Park Sung-do's father, walking to the door to exit the room, waved his right hand and said that Chief Kim would do it, and he would take care of the chairman. The man with glasses clarified that he was going to go to Jangan-don, and then said that he would be in touch. Park Sung-do's father replied that everything was fine. The girls in their bar had terribly boring faces, so he would go to Madam Kim. His subordinate said that he would send the children, and his boss asked why to frighten the chairman and, looking at him, said to settle everything himself. The subordinate replied that he understood him, and the boss and, concurrently, Park Sung-do's father left the room. Park Sung-do then turned to his father's subordinate with incomprehension. He asked the one that he wouldn't go. The man told him, agreeing that he would pass it on to the children, so let him go with them. Park Sung-do clarified with him that he really could, and the man also asked him that shouldn't he at least sort out the situation he had arranged. Park Sung-do joyfully started shouting that she would find the young man. The guy with a smile on his face thought that now he would deal with the northern fugitive, he would deal with him properly. At the present moment, Park Sung-do was covered and vaporized and thought that everything had to happen the way he intended. He looked at Im Ha-jin, with the bodies of the fallen guys lying around him, and wondered why he was the only one who was still standing. Park Sung-do was scared, and meanwhile Im Ha-jin started to approach him and asked him that they should talk a little more. Park Sung-do abruptly turned around and ran to the car, cursing out loud at the same time. But Im Ha-jin ran after him. The guy had already got into the car next to the driver and told him to drive and start the car as soon as possible. He also said that they need to leave faster. But then, the young man broke the glass in the door from the guy's side with his feet in a jump, and then, catching his hands on the same door and roof, hit the guy with one foot. The driver who was looking at this picture was shocked. Park Sung-do leaned against Tom at that moment. Im Ha-jin opened that very door, looking into the interior of the car. The driver was furious at this moment and held the guy in his arms. But then the young man punched him in the face. Park Sung-do's face was covered in blood, and he was scared. The young man sat down in his place and told him to go so that they could meet his father. At the same moment, 3 men were playing at the same table in the round-the-clock billiard room. A subordinate of Park Sung-do's father, trying on for hitting balls, asked one of the men that everything was also fine in other schools, and also that he had a headache when he spoke. The one who was asked, rubbing the cue with chalk, said that he did not think about the presence of any problems, because they would just need to deal with it. The man with glasses agreed with him and added that they should think about it. Their company is their bread. He turned around, looking at his watch, and asked why they hadn't arrived yet, because an hour had already passed. Another man told him that he had sent newcomers who are in good shape and know their business. He is sure that they will come. So, he said he sent 5. The man with glasses first asked that 5 people would not be too much, and then told them not to think. But then, another man's phone rang. He took it out of the inside pocket of his jacket and asked the caller where they were. When he received the answer, he cried out in incomprehension. Sung-doo's father's subordinate looked at him. The man, stuttering, called the one with glasses, and then, also stuttering, said that Park Song-doo had been kidnapped. The man with glasses got angry and asked what he was talking about, and then he turned the table over with his foot and said that Im Ha-jin really wasn't just an ordinary guy. Another man suggested that he was trained by professionals. The subordinate did not understand what to do, as he could not even call the police. He wondered what to say to him while holding his phone in one hand. He understood that he could not be told about the kidnapping of a small-time gangster. He received a phone call from his boss, Park Sung-doo's father, and he did not understand what he would say to him. After that, he answered the call, turned to the boss, who called him as the director about Kim, and said, apologizing, that something had happened between them. Park Sung-doo's father told them not to worry first. Director Oh Kim was surprised by this. His boss also said that Im Ha-jin was already with him, along with Park Sung-doo, whom he held by the hair with his right hand. In the dimly lit room, in addition to Park Sung-doo's father, there was another man sitting. Park Sung-doo had a bruised face, some of his teeth were missing. The guy was crying and calling for his father. His father took the phone away from his ear and, addressing Im Ha-jin, said that he was the one who had recently transferred. The young man also informed that Park Sung-doo told him that he could find him in this place. Im Ha-jin said he was pleased to meet Park Sung-doo's father as well as their chairman. The chairman asked the man, asking him to explain what was going on. He apologized and said that everything looked terrible, and also that he should leave that place. The chairman wanted to say something, but the young man abruptly slammed Park Song headfirst into the table. Im Ha-jin told them to stay put as he needed to talk to both of them. The chairman called him a freak and said that he talks to adults like that. But the young man took Park Song-doo by the hand, then grabbed the finger of this hand and broke it, bending it in the opposite direction. A guy screamed, and the men were shocked by this. Park Sung-doo's father abruptly stood up from where he was sitting. But Im Ha-jin asked him if it wasn't better for him not to move, if he doesn't want his son to get hurt in front of him. At that moment, Park Sung-doo called his father. The man was shaking with anger. The chairman, with saliva from his mouth, shouted to the man what he was doing and that he would stand still. He also said that the young man is a complete freak. Park Sung-doo's father sat down, covering his eyes with one hand, and pointed the other towards the chairman, and told him to wait a minute, and then apologized. The chairman shouted, whatever it was, he didn't care what he said. Park Sung-doo's father knocked the chairman to the floor with a punch to the face. He hit him several more times, while together with the blows he reminded him that he had previously told him to wait a minute, in the end insulting him. After that, he sat back down and then asked the young man about what he was going to do after that, whether he was sure for sure. Im Ha-jin told the man that he was sure. Moreover, the young man wanted to make a deal. After that, Im Ha-jin told about the transaction registers of the Yongjun group at the moment, which surprised the man, and asked him to give them to him. Also, he said that gangsters who are associated with corruption in political and financial circles are known for creating a private school, and then clarified that this is not such a big price. Park Sung-doo's father got up, at the same time starting to take off his jacket, and asked the young man that he was crazy at all, and then, in raised tones, clarified with him that for him it was just some kind of joke. After that, he said to release his son immediately. But the young man took hold of the guy's other finger and broke it. Song-doo's cry rang out again. It was he who prompted the man to act, namely to attack. Im Ha-jin was calm and only announced the end of their negotiations. Im Ha-jin announced the end of their negotiations. He defended himself from the man's attack by lifting the man by the hair and the collar of his clothes in front of him. The man's fist flew into the guy's face. The young man, after that, immediately raised his fist to strike, continuing to hold Park Song-doo with his other hand. The man, seeing this, put out both hands like a block. But Im Ha-jin wasn't aiming at him, so his fist landed on Park Sung-doo's face, which shocked the man. The young man first let go of Park Seong-doo, and then again lifted him by the face with one hand and asked his father what he thinks now. Maybe he wants to talk again. The man was angry. After that, Im Ha-jin turned to Tom as a friend of the northern head of the snake, which discouraged the man. The young man said that he looked surprised, and then asked the one that he was wondering how Im Ha-jin found out. The young man let go of Park Song-doo and went on the attack on the man, saying that he was also interested in it, just like he once was. The man put his hands in a defensive gesture on his head, but Im Ha-jin attacked lower, thereby pushing him away from himself, and then said that he was a spy. The men were sitting in a cafe, someone was eating, someone was watching TV. From it came the voice of the announcer, who first greeted and then announced the Saturday evening news at 9 o'clock. Then he talked about the declaration of war on crime by the president, but Xwu. When the men heard this, they did not understand what kind of war against crime they were talking about. One of the men said, laughing, that the president thought they were good enough to catch thieves like them. Another clarified that unless those people ever lied, they began to wonder if something special had happened, because they are also rich businessmen. Someone mimicked them, thanks to which they all turned their gazes to the place where this person was. There were several men at the entrance to the cafe, and the one in the middle said that they could not pretend to be businessmen just because they had earned some money. After that, he went on the attack, kicking one of the sitting. After that, he proclaimed that men should be taken. At the moment of the struggle between the two sides, the president's speech was on TV, but Xwu, as he said, wanted to destroy their society against crime and brutality by declaring war on them. With all the powers given to him as president by the Constitution, they will deal with this. The war on crime. October 13, 1990, an incident that began after the official announcement of the president that day. That will be an opportunity to nip South Korea's crime in the bud. One man in a military uniform was sitting fishing, and another was standing behind him. The one behind the fisherman said that by seizing the kingdom of the kulaks of South Korea, which had become communist, they had encroached on the underground capital of South Korea. But the Ministry of Defense of North Korea did not expect that the agents who were sent to South Korea, they are an uncontrolled group, would be divided into the Southern Mountain and the Northern Division. Who said all this was them Ha-jin. The man who was fishing was his commander, asked the young man that he was going to return the favor. Ha-jin agreed, while catching a big fish with one hand, and then bit off a piece of her flesh and said that he would devour them all with giblets. His gaze at that moment was full of determination. So, he will be able to use it. Ha-jin thought about it, towering over Park Sung-doo's father, and continuing to hold the guy's head with one hand. The man sat down on the sofa and, with a smile on his face, said that it had been a long time. North Koreans by type of youth. But the man was interrupted by Ha-jin, who said that this might be the man's last chance to save his son. The North was watching him. The young man recalled how the commander told him that it was difficult to keep track of each of the traitors. The young man said that while the man had nothing to lose, and his commander said that it was difficult to take something away from him. That's how he became the target. The commander also told the young man that Park Chang-soo was also part of a group of traitors. Ha-jin told him that because of one Yongjun school, which is under his control, the commander told the young man that he wanted Yongjun High School, but let Ha-jin not overdo it. The young man told the man that he himself knows this well. Even if it wasn't Ha-jin, North Korea is going after him. But unlike the party, he's not going to punish the man. The commander told the young man to do as he wants, because everything depends on him. The main thing is not to overwork. Ha-jin told the man to give him Yongjun High School, and then he would cover up the remaining traces. The man was dissatisfied with this arrangement and asked what would happen if he refused this offer. The young man crouched down to the floor and broke Park Sung-doo's arm in one movement in the shoulder. There was a loud scream from the guy, and foam started coming out of his mouth. Ha-jin, however, grabbing him by the hair with his hand, and then taking hold of his neck with his hands, said that the next thing that would break would not be his hand. Some time later, Yeonjun's school. One of the guys was rushing back and forth trying to call someone. He didn't understand what was going on. He asked the other guy about the reason why Park Sung-doo is not picking up the phone. The same one told him that Park Sung-doo had spoken about his intentions to tell his father about what had happened. They were wondering if everything was okay with the guy. The one who tried to call Park Sung-doo said that he couldn't help himself, so he had to beat Ha-jin with it, because he couldn't disgrace himself like that. The other asked if he was okay. The one who called went out of the office with the other guys. But then, the door opened abruptly. It was opened to them by Ha-jin, which surprised the guys. The one who called and walked ahead of everyone looked angrily at the young man and wanted to say something to him, but did not have time. Ha-jin, with one kick to the face of this guy, threw him away from himself. The other guys were amazed by it. They were scared, but they didn't run away. The young man went into the office and pushed back the chair near the table in it. Sitting down in a chair, Ha-jin said that Park Sung-doo would not come to school that day, and then ordered the guys to sit down. They looked at each other out of uncertainty, but they were seated by the serious look of the young man. When all the guys were seated, Ha-jin informed them that from that day on, Yongjun's school belongs to him. 3 men were in the hospital near ward number 311, in which Park Sung-doo was lying on a couch under an IV drip. Director Oh Kim and Park Sung-doo's father, Park Chang-soo, were also in the ward. Oh Kim asked the boss about what happened. He also asked about why Song-doo is in such a state and why he gave the data on Yeonjun's high school. Director Oh Kim wondered who Im Ha-jin was. Park Chang-soo recalled how the young man asked him that, instead of also being a target, wouldn't it be better to stop? At that moment, he lit a cigarette. He thought that the young man was someone who had been adequately trained. The man understood that it was even the fact that he hadn't done it for a long time, the skills that Ha-jin used in their fight, and the composure with which he broke someone's arm as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. From the very beginning, when he first came to Yeonjun's high school, the young man had a plan. Im Ha-jun used Song-doo as bait to catch him. Park Chan-soo's train of thought was interrupted by Principal Oh Kim, who said that it would be a problem for other schools that they also control. Oh Kim said that Park Jang-soo himself understands this, gangsters who work as contractors. If they find out about what happened, the contractors will leave, and they will stick to the school like parasites. Park Chang-soo said not to worry about it, and also that they would still need permission from the Yeonjun group to do it. At that moment, he walked over to the window and started looking out of it. The man also said that if they would only get rid of this young man, the situation could be corrected. Director Oh Kim asked if everything was going to be okay. Also, he said that the data that was given to Ha-jin by them, if this information goes out, it will be clear that the Yeonjun group is involved in this. Park Chang-soo informed him that the prosecutors would not touch them, so let him not worry. At that moment, he was thinking that Im Ha-jin was sure that the young man had already captured the elder Yeonjun, but that was impossible. After that, he ordered Director Oh Kim to kill the young man, which surprised him, but he bowed anyway and said he would sort it out. But their conversation was interrupted by people who were outside the door. Someone came for Park Chan-soo and asked about him from the men who guarded the entrance to the ward. The same ones were not going to let them in. But it didn't stop the men who came. They scattered Park Chan-soo's guards and then entered the ward. One of the newcomers was dressed in a pantsuit and he took out a piece of paper and announced that Park Chang-soo was detained without a warrant for organizing a criminal gang and espionage. Park Chang-soo didn't understand what was going on. He asked what they were doing in his son's room and kicked in the grip of two policemen who held his arms by his sides. The man in the suit told him to just go with them in a nice way. Also, he said that his office has already been searched with seizure. Everything is over for Park Chan-soo. At the same time, the man called him a commie. After that, Park Chan-soo and Director Oh Kim were led out of the ward and then out of the hospital. Park Jang-soo wouldn't let up and shouted about how they dare to do this to him, because he is a South Korean citizen. Behind the doors of the board was the commander of this man in a suit, namely Song Jae-won. The man asked him what kind of source he had. When they reached the elevator, Ott also asked that his informant seemed to be good. Song Jae-won replied that he had one spy bastard. After a while, the taekwondo player defeated another character in the game. Song Jae-won fought for one of these characters, but then he got a message on his phone. He was unhappy that this was his last blow. He was texted by Jeom Soo-jo, who asked where he was playing again and that she would order evening treats, wondering if he would while she offered chicken. He just said that who is playing there because he works. At the same time, he looked at Im Ha-jin, who was also sitting at a slot machine, which was located behind the one at which the man was sitting. Im Ha-jin told Song Jae-won that the South Korean should use taekwondo. It was he who defeated the man in the game. Then he said, greeting that they had not seen each other for a long time, addressing the man as a commander. Song Jae-won recalled their conversation that took place during the interrogation, when Im Ha-jin immediately confessed that he was a spy. The man took out cigarettes from the pack and put it in his mouth, then handing the pack to the young man, asked if he smoked. Im Ha-jin asked Song Jae-won about the fact that smoking is not prohibited in the room. The man swore while breaking his cigarette in his fist, and then he asked about the seriousness. The young man clarified that the man was talking about smoking. Song Jae-won replied that he wasn't talking about that. Im Ha-jin also said that North Korea has broken through the wall to South Korea. The spies who first encountered capitalism called this place Hell Joseon. They couldn't stand it. If a spy is good, then he will be a gangster. If not, you will do manual labor. Therefore, selected youngsters like him were early adapted to South Korea. Based on this, they will be able to build a high-ranking social status in this way. Song Jae-won agreed with the young man, lighting up at the same time. Im Ha-jin reminded the man that smoking is not allowed in the interrogation room, to which Song Jae-won replied that he would pay the fine. The man asked Im Ha-jin what he was thinking, to give up and live like a South Koryo. Im Ha-jin disagreed with him and said that his family was being held captive in the north. Song Jae-won exclaimed emotionally that he thought he would be easily released just because of this. The young man understood that there was no, which is what he told him, so he wants to negotiate. Im Ha-jin said he would be a double spy. When they came to the shooting range, Im Ha-jin handed the man a flash drive and said that it contained data on Young-jun and Park Jong-soo's transactions. He did it as promised. Im Ha-jin asked Song Jae-won if he had 1,000 won while holding a gun for a shooting range, and also said that the deals for other schools would be similar. Aiming a gun, the young man informed the man that if they caught Park Jong-soo on this and dug deeper, they would be able to track down the Bukdu clan or the Namsan clan. They both appeared in the 90s. Song Jae-won realized that this was not an original copy of the documents, which he asked the young man about. He also said that the prosecutors would still not be able to touch Yeonjun's high schools because of the Yeonjun groups, and the young man knows about it. That's why the man asked him what he was going to do with this data. Im Ha-jin fired the gun several times, while clearly hitting the targets, and said that he also wanted to try himself in business. After that, he put the gun away, took his backpack and, leaving, said that they would see each other another time. The man finally called the young man and handed him a photo of his sister, who worked in a noodle shop. Song Jae-won said with a smile that, as agreed, everything was fine with his sister. Im Ha-jin stood and looked at the picture of his sister, and then asked the man that he was hinting that he should keep his word if he wanted to see his sister. After that, he said that Song Jae-won was so gracefully threatening him. Song Jae-won told the young man that he noticed it. Im Ha-jin put his sister's photo in the breast pocket of his school uniform jacket, and told the man not to worry, because he would turn in spies, as promised. When Im Ha-jin turned around and started to leave, he said that the price for the photo would be exactly that. A guy came up to Song Jae-won with a big teddy bear toy. The delivery man and Song Jae-won looked at each other with incomprehension. At the same time, Yeonjun's school. Song Si-byok sat at her desk and recalled Im Ha-jin's words on the topic that next time, she should fight. The girl thought that even though the young man says so, for her such fights are too much. Here, some girl gave a slap on the back of the head to Si-byok. There were two others with that girl. She asked what Song Si-byok Sutra was doing earlier, and then clarified that she was with Im Ha-jin. Also, this girl told her henchman that Song Si-byok had already flirted with the young man. One girl on her word said that Song Si-byok really likes men, and the other said that she saw them on a date the day before last in the store. Song Si-byok said that they were just eating there. One of the students said that this company was at it again, and another told them to stop making noise and leave the classroom. The main one of this trio suggested that Song Si-byok had brought them Ha-jin to burn garbage with her to make them feel bad. Another girl said that she was very surprised, because who knew that the young man alone would defeat everyone. One of the trio asked that after those events, Song Si-byok and Im Ha-jin were together. Another said that she had heard about her mother, who is not at home but in the hospital. The main one of their trio said that's why Song Si-byok brought the young man to her home. That girl started talking about the fact that Song Si-byok is a dirty girl. But she didn't have time to finish, because a fist flew into her face. She was hit by Song Si-byok, who did not understand it herself, but at the same time surprised everyone. The girls who were with her immediately ran up to her. They called her by the name of Min-young, asked how she was and told her to wake up. The students around began to whisper among themselves. The girls from the trio also carried Min-young out of the office. At that moment, Im Ha-jin entered the office. Song Si-byok stood near her desk and looked at her fist, not believing that she really did it. But then a young man called her, asking her to move away. After that, they sat down at their desks. Song Si-byok called Ha-jin to them and then thanked him with a smile. The girl corresponded on the phone with Song Jae-won. She tried to invite him to dinner, to which he replied that he was busy, so let her go alone. At that moment, she was thinking that he would drop dead if he answered in a little more detail. This girl was a colleague of Song Jae-won named Ra Hongju. The taxi driver took her to some building and said that they had arrived, for which he received a thank you from her. The girl went up to the apartment where there was another girl younger than her. She asked Ra Hongju how she was doing and also said that she came early this time. This girl's name is Ra Hongmai. She is the third daughter and belongs to the Yeonjun group. Ra Hongju took off her jacket and sat down on the sofa in a relaxed manner. She said that she had heard about the change of patron at her sister's school. It seems that director Park Chan-soo has come to an end. Ra Hongmai agreed and asked how she found out about it. Also, she said that she had already gone to lunch with director Lee Senior Young-jun that day. Ra Hongju reminded that she works in national intelligence, so it was easy for her to find out. Ra Hongmai said that before that she thought it was just a hobby, to which her sister replied that she was serious. Ra Hongju asked about what Director Lee said, while the girl was opening a tin can, the work that Park Young-soo was doing, whether I fully trust her boyfriend. Ra Hongmai replied that she wasn't sure, because Director Lee didn't seem to like this guy. The girl thought that he had given the job to someone else. She wondered if her sister knew about it. One of the students was walking along the corridor of the school. At that moment, the teacher asked where Song Si-baek was. One person from the class replied that she had gone to the hospital to see her mother. A man who was walking down the corridor came up to the office where Im Ha-jin studied. The teacher wanted to say something, but noticed the intruder. It was a guy. He noticed out loud that they were having a lesson, but it didn't hurt the guy to go there. He was smoking in the office, and when he approached the teacher, he put his hand on his shoulder, and then said that he would leave after he finished with things in the classroom. According to Ra Hongmai, the guy was a real troublemaker at their school. The guy went to the desk where Im Ha-jin was sitting. The young man did not understand anything, and the intruder meanwhile said that here he was, a new slave. The guy belonged to a branch of Bukdu group. He was the third son of the Jansen clan, and his name is Kang Jong-min, a man who had previously been at a meeting with Park Chan-soo and was defeated by him at Im Ha-jin, sat with his legs tucked under him. His interlocutor was looking at a photo of Im Ha-jin on his phone at that moment. He clarified that the man wants him to deal with the young man. The man said that he would only need to put a little pressure on him. This interlocutor was Kim Jong-min. The man turned to him and said that even if Park Jong-soo's group were just patrons, leaving such a thing to someone who doesn't even have a backup option is not good. He is sure that the president himself did not want this, and neither did Hong Mi-young, since she studies at the same school. Kim Jong-min, putting out a cigarette on the table, said that he does not like annoying things. Then he clarified that he needed to catch and beat Ha-jin with it, to which he received consent in response. Someone interrupted them. This person turned out to be a girl who apologized to them for being late. This girl turned out to be Ra Hongmai, the third daughter, who belongs to the Yeonjun group. Kim Jong-min smiled and waved at her while saying that she was not late. When the girl approached the table from the guy's side, she asked him about the fact that he had smoked recently in the room. She didn't like the smell of cigarettes. Kim Jong-min disagreed and said it was Director Lee smoking. The man apologized to the girl immediately after the guy's words. Ra Hongmai also told the guy to stop bothering Director Lee, and she also asked why the man was sitting on his knees, to which she received the answer that it was more convenient for him. When the girl sat down at the table, she saw a phone on the table, on which she saw Im Ha-jin. After picking up the phone, the girl said that the young man was handsome, to which Kim Jong-min immediately said that it was a lie. The girl asked Kim Jong-min that he would deal with Im Ha-jin, to which she received a positive response. After that, she asked him about what was going on, because the guy's family would not meddle in such matters. Kim Jong-min replied that it was because he was also very interested in the guy. Currently, Kim Jong-min called the young man a new slave and threw a cigarette out of his hand. Im Ha-jin followed her with his gaze, and at that moment the guy went on the attack, aiming his fist at the face of the sitting young man. All the students were surprised by these actions. Im Ha-jin deflected the opponent's hand with his hand, and then pushed his desk at him. With these actions, the young man surprised Kim Jong-min a lot, who eventually caught the desk with one hand. Kim Jong-min with a smile on his face said that the young man is better than Park Sung-do. After that, the teacher asked the two of them about what they were doing. The guy threw the desk behind him and said, with a smile on his face, that they were talking like men. Some students were frightened by the fallen desk. They didn't understand what was wrong with Kim Jong-min. Milking them, he seemed crazy. The guy told them Ha-jin that he had no personal questions for him, but he himself knows that a cornered stone meets a mason's chisel. He received a request, which he told the young man about. A request from a person who doesn't like him. After these words, Kim Jong-min went on the attack, trying to hit the young man with his fist, but he dodged again. Im Ha-jin blocked a series of punches by Jong-min, and then walked away from the guy to the side. But Kim Jong-min continued to attack the young man. Im Ha-jin rejected the guy's hand, and at that moment a teacher appeared behind them, who told them both to stop. The guy's fist flew a few centimeters from the teacher's head, knocking off a couple of hairs and scaring him. The teacher fell to his knees in fright, and the guys continued their fight. Im Ha-jin defended himself from another attack by Kim Jong-min, after that bumping into a desk standing behind him. He tumbled over her and calmly landed on his feet, and then told the guy that he didn't know what he had forgotten in the office, but let him leave because they had a lesson. Kim Jong-min apologized and said that he usually does not go to lessons. With these words, the guy jumped and attacked the young man. A slender girl with short hair was swimming in the pool. A man was sitting on a chaise longue under an umbrella, doing something on a laptop. The girl, who was Ra Hongju, emerged from the pool and, wiping her hair, approached that man. This man was Song Jae-wan. The girl asked him if he would go swimming, because she had paid the rent. After that, Ra Hongju approached the man from behind and asked him that he was looking through information on the Namsan clan, which is associated with Park Chan-soo, and also that he wanted to pass it on to the informant. Song Jae-wan told her that it didn't matter, as he was just giving a little extra information, because the informant was doing a good job after all. Ra Hongju said she didn't understand something. The man turned in her direction. The girl had already moved to the next lounger and stood with her back to him, while bending over for a robe, and asked about what Ha Jin was doing to them. Song Jae-wan turned away from the girl and told her that she herself could understand about the seizure of the school, the seizure of the territory. Ra Hongju said, already wearing a robe, that she didn't understand. The girl knows that the young man is looking for a way to save his younger sister with the help of Song Jae-wan. But the school and the territory have nothing to do with that. Song Jae-wan informed her that it was for the discovery and conquest of territory for spies. Since this is the zone that Park Chan-soo bequeathed, so shouldn't they give this territory to the Bukdu clan, so they will get more information. This is exactly what Song Jae-wan explained to the girl. In order to do this, Im Ha-jin will have to negotiate with Kang Jong-min. The boys continued to fight in the classroom. They got really fired up. The other students looked at them in amazement. Kim Jong-min bit his lower lip at that moment and thought that he would not be able to finish quietly. In any case, the young man is the one with whom the guy will meet only once. But if possible, Kang Jong-min would like to deal with the young man quietly. Their fight was watched through the window by a girl who was standing in the corridor. This girl was Ra Hong-mai. She was mad at the guy. The girl thought that Kang Jong-min was crazy, and also that she still wondered where the guy went after school, and now he was doing something wrong. She was trying to figure out how to fix the situation. But after that, Ra Hong-mai thought that it was too late anyway, so she could try to come in as their skirmish would end. She admitted that Im Ha-jin is good, better than she expected. Kim Jong-min may look like a bully, but he was raised in a special way by his family. At the moment when Kim Jong-min's seemingly punch reached Im Ha-jin, he was able to dodge and then counterattack the guy. Ra Hong-mai thought at that moment that the young man was a monster. This startled the girl. This blow threw the guy so hard that Kim Jong-min was thrown out of the classroom, while demolishing the door to him. Ra Hong-mai looked at the defeated guy who was lying unconscious on the door. Meanwhile, Song Jae-wan told Ra Hongju that it would be hard to catch Kang Jong-min too. But this is just the beginning. More is still ahead. Those who were waiting for the opportunity to enter the territory of Park Jong-soo. Some man gathered his subordinates. He asked them if they had all gathered. In front of him, standing in line, were full of guys who were dressed identically. Local gangs won't sit still. The retreat organizations that were branches of Park Jong-soo, Namsan clan, they will do the same. Song Jae-wan informed Ra Hongju that there would be a bloodbath in this area with Im Ha-jin in the spotlight. The eyes of Im Ha-jin and Ra Hong-mai crossed. After that, the young man turned to the teacher, bowed his head in a bow and apologized to him. The teacher forgave the young man and told him to sit down. But then, Im Ha-jin heard Kim Jong-min's voice. When he turned around, he saw a guy standing in the doorway, leaning against the wall. His shirt was unbuttoned and there were tattoos on his chest and torso. He raised his head and smiled, and then said that he had not had so much fun for a long time. Kim Jong-min told them Ha-jun not to tell him that he was going to stop there. The young man turned around and saw a guy who was standing in the doorway, leaning against the wall. The guy also said that everything had suddenly taken an interesting turn. The young man did not answer anything, and Kim Jong-min suggested that he do everything right, while going on the attack again, and raising his fist for this. But someone grabbed him sharply by the hair from behind, thereby stopping him. It was Ra Hong-mai who was mad at the guy. She told him to stop and asked about what he had arranged in someone else's classroom. Kim Jong-min was shaking with pain and asked the girl to let him go. The girl apologized to the teacher and other students. Kim Jong-min started shouting at her to let him go. Ra Hong-mai, continuing to hold the guy by the hair, told him to shut up and go, thereby taking him out of the classroom. Kim Jong-min shouted that he was in pain and that he had only recently styled his hair. The girl wondered if Im Ha-jin could fight Kim Jong-min and not lose. She thought it was hilarious. After a while, messages from Kim Jong-min started coming to Im Ha-jin's phone, which was recorded in the young man's phone as a goofball. He asked about the fact that the young man thinks that he will get rid of him so easily. Also, Kim Jong-min sent threats, gifts, wrote messages saying that let the young man answer him. In addition, the guy sent photos and wrote insults. Im Ha-jin was tense, but then his attention was attracted by a man with a strong build, who called his name. With a smile on his face, the man called him to eat. To this he received a positive response. The fugitives, who have no family in the south, either go to alternative training or live in group homes, which are monitored by civilians. At this moment, there were 3 people sitting at the table, namely, that beefy man, Im Ha-jin, and some girl. The man asked the girl about when the rest of the people would come. The girl told him that they were probably busy as they did not respond to messages. The man was unhappy with this and informed 2 guys that he had previously told others that they should have dinner together. The man asked the guys about their affairs at school. Im Ha-jin replied that everything was fine, to which their senior friend said that if there are problems, let them tell him about it right away. Also, smiling, the man said that Im Ha-jin is always in his uniform, so he will give him some clothes from his job, because he should dress well so that he is respected in the south. He has a lot of shoes, so the young man can also safely take them. After these words, the man asked permission to inspect the young man's belongings when he left. The girl said that it looked like a man was developing a shopping center, especially since he had never offered her anything like that, to which she received an answer that she already gets a lot from him. Besides, they have a similar physique with the young man. Im Ha-jin's phone vibrated again from the incoming SMS message. The girl said that the guy had already written a lot of messages and clarified whether it was worth answering him. The young man agreed with her proposal, and then notified the man that after dinner he was going for a walk. The man clarified about the late time, to which he received consent, and also, Im Ha-jin said that he had things to settle. The young man smiled and thought that if he wanted to seize that territory, he needed to do it officially. John Ming was going somewhere. He was angry that Im Ha-jin was taking a long time to reply to messages. Im Ha-jin sent him one message, or rather a photo with a dot on the map. He was especially angry because he wrote a lot, and he replied with one message. The guy recalled their fight with the young man, and he understood that Im Ha-jin did not fight seriously then. The guy decided that he didn't care about the director and everything else. It was a matter of honor for him. He came to a place and was surprised to find himself in front of a baseball field. John Ming opened the gate from the gate to the playground with his foot, calling the young man by name. But then his eyes widened in surprise. He saw men of bandit appearance and dressed in the same clothes. One of them came forward, holding a bat in his hands, and asked about the fact that only one guy came. Kim Jong-min didn't understand what was going on. Another said that Kim Jong-min is brave and that he thought it was some kind of joke, especially after he beat up their guys and left them his geolocation. The guy was scared, tried to stop them and explained to them that a mistake had occurred, because he was not on the playground for them. The man who spoke to him first said, tapping the bat on one hand, that it wasn't him who beat up their guys. Kim Jong-min realized that Im Ha-jin had deceived him. Meanwhile, the man continued to say that the point is not that, because the guy came to them for some reason. The guy realized that the young man was using him as a scapegoat. After that, the man ordered to attack the guy. Im Ha-jin was on the street and thought about the fact that there were 4 gangs in Gusan that were under the patronage of Park Chan-soo. The young man recalled his conversation with Song Jae-wan, or rather, as the man explained to him that the boss is stronger than all of them. Song Yi-tak runs the laundry. Im Ha-jin, looking at the documents, offered to chop off his head and then deal with the body. Song Jae-wan explained to him that if they were tightly bound, it could cause even more unnecessary problems. Their priority is someone more experienced. And then the man clarified about his confidence. Song Jae-wan reminded the young man that he didn't even take John Min with him, and there are more than 50 people there. To this, the man received an answer that the young man would create chaos. Song Jae-wan didn't understand what he was talking about. That's them Ha-jin beat some of the gang guys. He held one by the breasts and told him to remember that tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the evening, at the baseball field in Gusan, moths will fly to the light. The men from the gang are beaten. The others were sitting in some room and doing who what. One of them asked what was going on, and the other that the place was closed. Im Ha-jin replied that he himself knows about it. He decided that while the subordinates were busy, he would deal with their head. The head, when he saw the young man, was scared. He recognized him and realized that Im Ha-jin is the one who defeated his henchman. The man was covered with tattoos on his chest and hips. The head of the gang was not surprised, because it was amazing when he told the gangsters to come to the baseball field. The head smiled and said that it just so happened that he had a couple of his guys left, which just clung to the glass, being behind the young man. Song Jae-wan asked Im Ha-jin, who was leaving for the train, what he thought about the ease of this case. To this he received an answer from the young man that it did not matter to him if his plan was perfect. In the closing doors, he told the man about real confidence. Real confidence is not shown in words. Here, Im Ha-jin attacked one of the henchmen of the clan head. Another man at that moment went on the attack, but the young man dodged. While dodging, he stuck his hand into some kind of machine gun. Im Ha-jin filled this hand with change and, with it, attacked that man. Another one tried to attack him from behind with a knife, but, thanks to him, the previous attacker was shoved into the washing machine. And then, with the door from this very machine, he hit the man's hand in which he was holding a knife. The gang leader was not happy with this situation, and after the flying knife of one of his henchmen flew into the washing machine next to his head, he was scared. Fixing his gaze forward, the leader encountered a look with a confident and calm expression in the gaze of a young man. After that, another of his subordinates rushed to attack. Im Ha-jin grabbed a rag from the floor. After that, he swung and then caught that man by the neck with the same rag. Almost all the accomplices of the gang leader were defeated, not counting the small units of men. The gang leader wondered who the young man was, but then Im Ha-jin felt some kind of stirring behind him. It was the gang leader who was holding an open box of laundry detergent for the attack. Then the man shook out the powder on the young man, who covered himself with his hands in a protective gesture. The leader of the gang, wasting no time, went on the attack, raising his fist to strike. The young man was still blinded. Kim Jong-min was also fighting at that moment. His legs were already shaking from fatigue, and at this moment he was thinking about how Im Ha-jin dared to use him as bait. The guy promised himself that as soon as he got out of there, he would definitely kill the young man. Kim Jong-min still had a decent number of opponents. One of them asked the guy if he wanted to give up, because he was already tired, as he sees, and he could die. Kim Jong-min, this proposal infuriated even more than the whole situation. After that, he sent these men to go far and for a long time, and then told them to attack him. One of the men went on the attack, while swinging the bat over his head and saying that he ran into himself. Kim Jong-min continued to hold his hands in a protective gesture. The guy fought off another opponent, throwing his bat at the end of the attack. But then someone interrupted their fight and told them to stop fighting. It was a man who spoke softly, and behind him was another who duplicated all his words with normal voices. At first, he said that it was because their master was not in this place. It did not mean that they could cling to each other's throats, because for him it was just a waste of strength. This man was a member of Namsen's 5th-generation apostate organization, and his name is Young Tae-ju.